and HD1 Burlington, Philadelphia. A Beasley Media Group station. Broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studios. Powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. Now, the John Kincade Show. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
So we saw Buffalo and Kansas City go at it last night. Kansas City, who got there by beating Miami, who the Eagles beat. Buffalo playing Kansas City, who the Eagles beat. Kansas City goes to the AFC title game, who the Eagles beat. And I absolutely am fascinated to once again say, how in the world did the 2023 season collapse like that as you watch the AFC playoffs unfold? And that doesn't even mention the fact that you lost to Tampa Bay in the playoffs, who you beat in the regular season. You saw Dallas lose in the first round, but you beat them in the regular season. It's just fascinating to think that a team that was that good against playoff teams collapsed the way they did. Joe Santoliquito has a piece with Bleeding Green Nation about potential theories as to why everything broke down. And before you say, it's just rumors and innuendo and everything we saw, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not. We have no news except the fact that there will be a new defensive staff coming in, which just tells me that Nick Sirianni's back. And I think that's going to go over extremely poorly with a large percentage of the fan base of this team. And I'm still wondering why we're approaching 7 days and there's no word. Now, you don't have to have a press conference to say we are keeping our coach who has 2 years left in his contract. But you do have to explain, what's the plan? What's the plan? Who's doing the hiring? What's the agenda? What's the year-end wrap-up? None of that. And to me, Bob, you've been through a million of these. It's a bad look to me right now, what they're doing. Almost 7 full days from the end of their season. It seems like there's no answers, and more importantly, no one willing to give answers from the NovaCare complex as to what went down. As to even a wrap-up on the season. Just give me a wrap-up on the season. Don't tell me who's coming back. Don't tell me the coordinator. Just tell me about the season. They won't even do that.
Tell you about the season? What do you mean? You need
like a year-end wrap-up. Yes, Nick Sirianni behind a microphone like every other coach in the NFL does when their season's over, sits behind a mic and answers questions. It's 7 days. What, are they writing scripted answers for him?
I don't know. Well, when a guy's job is in flux, I guess you don't throw him behind a microphone, or he doesn't want to go behind a microphone, not knowing if he's still the head coach or not, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, if they come out with say tomorrow, and all of a sudden, boom, everything's dropped, and Eric Bieniemy's your new offensive coordinator, and they have somebody as a defensive coordinator that you really like. Well, then it's like, wow, they're just doing due diligence. So I don't know. I'll hold out judgment right now. Yeah, it does suck. You thought you were going to get some kind of answers besides just Sean Desai being fired, which he pretty much was after 13 games of the season. So, your defensive side of the ball is all up in the air. You don't really have anybody at all. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know. It is weird. You thought something was going to come out after a meeting on Friday, and then it turns out that meeting went on into Saturday. And then you get reports that Jeffrey Lurie told Nick Sirianni that he needed to fire both of his offensive and defensive coordinators. I don't know. I mean, fire your defensive coordinator. They did. Your real defensive coordinator isn't under contract anymore, and Matt Patricia. So that's all wide open. I don't know.
I have no idea what they're doing. And that's frustrating because there should be, more importantly, at the end of a season, there should be some sort of a debrief. And it shouldn't take a week for Nick Sirianni to be behind a microphone. And more importantly, to know sort of what this plan's going to be moving forward. And is it going to be lipstick on the pig? Are they just going to say, you know what, we're much closer to that 10-1 team than anything that happened down the stretch. Don't worry about it. We're changing some coaches out, and we're going to be a completely different team in 2024. I don't know if you're buying it, Pat, but it seems like you got to resolve yourself to the fact that Nick Sirianni's the coach of this team, at least for next year.
Yeah, I've kind of accepted the fact that he will be. The fact that we haven't heard anything at this point kind of tells you all you need to know about his job security. The fact that he was the one who reportedly made the decision, and I use that term very loosely, to fire Sean Desai, as if we didn't know that was coming. Tells you everything you need to know about if he's coming back or not. At this point, it would be a massive surprise if Nick Sirianni was fired.
You seem though resolved. You seem resolved to. You don't agree with it.
No, I don't. I mean, we're setting ourselves up to be in a very similar situation next year. If they have success, then your coordinator's getting poached, and if they don't have success, then you're in a situation where you're probably firing them. So, but at that point, you're probably firing everybody.
But a lot of coaches haven't been hired yet. There's plenty of. I mean, it doesn't. If the Eagles decided to part ways with Nick Sirianni today, they still have their absolute choice of the list.
Yeah.
They can get Bill Belichick on a line. They can get Jim Harbaugh in for an interview. They could go and find whatever candidate they wanted. There hasn't been movement.
Yeah, maybe that's why we haven't heard anything, because, they're lining everything else up to maybe drop a bombshell. This guy's gone. This guy's gone. This guy's here. This guy's here. I don't know. If there was more movement in the NFL, like you said, John, if we saw a bunch of coordinators being signed and coaches being hired and all of those things, then, yeah, I would be frustrated. But for now, I'm just kind of like sitting back and waiting and saying, okay, what's going to happen here? Who's going to be the new defensive coordinator? Who's going to be the new offensive coordinator if they do indeed decide to part with Brian Johnson? And, yeah, I would like to hear from Jeffrey Lurie. I don't care what Nick Sirianni has to say anymore. Like we've
What if he's your coach?
Yeah, I know.
You don't care what he has.
Well, I mean, you're begging for him to talk, but every time he talks, we all say, like, what did he say? So, like, what do we need him to like? I don't know. Like, talk is cheap to me right now. I would like to hear Jeffrey Lurie talk. I would like to hear the owner of this team tell me, all right, what kind of direction are you going in? Where did you see this season? What do you think happened? What do you want to do moving forward? I want to hear it from the top. I don't need to hear the rhetoric that we've heard from Nick Sirianni for the last 6-7 weeks.
What's the delay? If you had one thing you could point to that you believe the delay in all these sort of dominoes falling and whatever direction they're going to take, what do you think's the delay?
The interview process, talking to people.
Coordinators, you mean?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Getting out there. Maybe he's not totally decided on Nick Sirianni either. Maybe, he asked him for a game plan. He gave some. It was intriguing. He said he needed more. I don't know. It is odd. Well, it's not odd that the team didn't come out with a statement, but it's kind of odd that a Schefter or somebody else didn't come out and say Philadelphia has decided to retain Nick Sirianni as their head coach, and they will continue looking for offensive and defensive coordinators.
What's the delay, Pat? A theory. If you had one thing to point to, what do you think's the delay in getting information?
Jeffrey Lurie never really rushes these things, so he's taking his time.
So he
didn't really rush the Doug Peterson firing.
That came 8 days after.
Yeah, that's my only.
Is there new information going to surface in this? Like, is Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman going to learn anything about Nick Sirianni by doing due diligence that they don't already know? This team had an epic collapse, a collapse that we've never seen. In the 17-game NFL, we've never seen a team go 10-1 and then finish up 11-7. We've never seen it. So, I mean, don't they know what happened? Don't they understand what happened?
Sure. Like I said before to you guys, it's not like an owner sits back and talks to a coach every once in a while. I don't believe. And in my dealings with that, coaches, GMs, owners, they're always talking to each other. Always. I mean, that's their business. That the owner owns that team. Everything underneath of him he wants to know about. So this isn't a surprise. Did Jeffrey Lurie give Nick Sirianni the chance to say, all right, come up with a game plan moving forward and tell me what it is and tell me what it's different from the last 7 games of the season? Now, maybe they did something like that. Maybe he put him under some kind of a pressure for answering questions like that. But no, there's hardly any questions that aren't already answered before this season ended.
Do the Eagles believe that this is going to be well received? It's one of my biggest questions.
I don't think they care.
I don't think they care either, Pat. And I think that anytime a consumer is not taken into consideration by the content provider, the business, whatever, we don't care about our customers, I think it's a bad message. And I think they don't understand, or they're either tone deaf to what's going on here. Whether or not you believe Nick Sirianni is to blame for what went down with this Eagles team, it is absolutely 100% fact. He presided over it, and he had numerous opportunities to fix it, and he couldn't fix it. He had no plans that worked. None of his tactics managed to have any kind of impact. So to me, I mean, that's sort of the bottom line of this whole thing is that no matter what I hear, as you say, Bob, what you hear out of Nick Sirianni, you don't tend to get much. But whatever I hear out of any of them right now, if Nick Sirianni's back, you are just supposed to ignore the fact that the building burned down and he had control of the fire hose.
Yeah, that's the damning thing. Like this team, and I put it that they I don't want to say quit.
Well,
they didn't have a relationship with their coaches in my eyes. It looked like they did not believe what the coaches were asking them to do that was going to be successful in those last 7 games of the season. Total disconnect, lost, any words you want to use, I think is correct. When you have that, you're right. If I have an offensive guy that's not in cohesion with an offensive coordinator, my job as head coach is to fix it. He didn't fix anything over those last 7 games. And those players were lost. And that coaching staff was lost. And those players didn't have the ability with their playmaking to overcome it. And that's damning on the players, too. We can't let that go. I mean, we're talking about coaches. It's damning on the players that they didn't perform the way they should. But when it looks like the way it looked, yeah, I'm not shocked, but I'm almost in disbelief that they're going to keep this head coach.
Go back and listen to the players again in their exit interviews where they had a chance to talk to the local media. And it is overwhelming the fact that Nick Sirianni is a great guy, Pat. He's a wonderful person. They like him. He creates a fun culture to come to work. They enjoy playing for him. And you hear none of these guys, and I went back and listened to some of it this weekend too. You heard none of them saying, you know what? When we go into a game, we know our coach has got a master. He's a strategist, man. We had a great game plan today. I heard 3 Chiefs comment about, man, we had a plan today, and that plan worked. And that plan was we put in the work. Yeah, but
they're going to say that because they won.
You didn't hear that at 10-1.
You're not. I mean, but give me a Buffalo Bill that said that.
I mean,
I don't know. I mean, they're the one that lost.
No, I mean,
when the Eagles lose, I doubt they're going to come in because if the Eagles were to lose and they come in and go, well, we had a plan, I'm going to sit there and go, kiss my ass. You had a plan. You had a plan. You lost. It's easy to say we have a plan when we win. I expect them to not laud their plan. But ultimately, whatever they say, if they say pro Sirianni or against Sirianni,
this isn't after one game. This is about summarizing him as a coach.
Yeah,
they don't summarize him as a strategist.
But and at this point, we know he's not.
Yep.
So we know he's an ultimate rah-rah, Rudy guy. I mean, I could find a guy on Instagram that gives great inspirational speeches that can take Nick Sirianni's job for half the price. E-Rock could do it. But at that point, if you were looking for a positive, the positive is for a rah-rah guy, he hasn't seemed to lose the locker room. They seem to buy into whatever spiel he's selling. He just, he can't game plan to save his. Well, I guess he did game plan to save his job because he's saving his job.
Yeah, we will have your opportunity to chime in here. First of all, if you have a theory on what's holding this thing up, love to hear it. Secondly, I really am trying to figure out, are you going to buy in with Nick Sirianni back? If that is the resolution to this entire thing, and do they care? Do they care what you have to say about whether Sirianni's back or not? It is a strange turn of events. 610-632-0975 if you would like to get in on an early opinion this morning. It's the John Kincade Show here on 97.5 The Fanatic. I only tell you to use one app. It's the BetParks app. They're the official winning partner of the Philadelphia 76ers with Of something we talked about last week on the show, and Pat, this makes your point intently from Jeff Kerr at CBS. The Packers, the Bucks, and the Bills all 0-3 with a short week. Having to play in the divisional playoffs in a short week is something the NFL should correct. It's absolutely a ridiculous thing that the Packers play in a short week and have to go cross country. The Bucks play Monday to Sunday, short week, and have to travel. The Bills, the short week from Monday due to the snowstorm. The Bills is a little different because the game had to get changed. But again, you play in a short week, it's not what you want.
And it's not necessarily a short week, but the 49ers get an extra day of rest again because they played on Saturday.
Right. Well,
So the team that had already had a lot of rest gets some more rest, which
I like the number one seeds getting that advantage.
yeah, and that's the counterpoint to it, and I completely understand that. And trust me, if it was the Eagles, I wouldn't be complaining about it. That's for sure. But
Right.
I do sit there and wonder, okay, the number one seed, like how much of an advantage are we going to give them already? Like you have to go there, and we laid that out. You have to go there on short weeks and play in San Fran, and then you give them even more rest. I don't think they need 2 back-to-back weeks of rest.
Well, the last year, the number one seed Chiefs played in the early game on Saturday, beat Doug Peterson and the Jags. And then the Eagles, the number one seed in the NFC, played the Giants on the night game. So they both got to play on Saturday last year.
And I wasn't complaining about that.
And yeah,
it was my team.
I sort of think that's the way it should be. If you're the number one seed, you play the Saturday games. And then it gives you an extra day.
I might be in a soy boy right now, probably a little bit.
I want the regular season to mean something. Like I want if you get an advantage, you should have an advantage. But short weeks, that Monday night game's got to go away.
I can't. I bet you it will.
You really don't?
I don't think it'll go away at all.
Money thing, yeah.
That's why, yeah.
You wonder if the players have say, fans have say. I mean, my God, how much more money does the NFL need? You're putting guys at risk of injury so badly when you play them on a Monday night and they come back on a Saturday or a Sunday. That's awful, and it's not fair. You need to reward teams, even if they are the 7th seed. They should be rewarded for making the playoffs, not, you made it, but we're going to make you play Monday night and then on a Saturday or Sunday. That's crap.
The competition committee worries about the tush push, right? They worry about stuff like this and not worrying about something that really does give an advantage.
Yeah, they worry about the tush push, yet there hasn't been a mandate on MetLife Stadium to change out their turf, which players loathe playing on.
Oh, no, they're going to do it for the World Cup.
Yeah, they'll switch it out for that.
Yeah, for the World Cup, they'll do it.
But, I mean, NFL players, you won't find one guy that likes playing on MetLife's turf. Eagles have to do it once a year. I mean, yeah, the competition committee is such a joke when it comes to player safety and what they do care about and what they don't. It's ridiculous.
So Bradford White water heaters are here for the pro. Bradford White brings you the 6 o'clock hour of the John Kincade Show. As we are in wait-and-see mode right now with this Eagles team, we're waiting for information to come out. And, Bob, you're asking the question about Jeffrey Lurie. Do you like how he's handled this weekend? Because I do like someone who doesn't make a rash decision. But I'm wondering why we're approaching 7 full days and we still really know nothing about what the direction's going to be, except that we're going to have new defensive coaches, and everybody knew that last Monday night by the time the buses left for the airport in Tampa. Nothing's changed with that.
Well, we don't know. Hopefully he does. Hopefully he had a huge game plan when the game got done last Monday. And, you see him walking to the locker room with that just disgusted look on his face. I'm sure he has a very good idea of the way he's going to move forward. Now, like I said, the fact that there isn't a lot of names going other places, this guy went there and this guy there. It looks like he has his, finger on what's going on around the league. That guys aren't getting hired right away, that he's not losing out on people right now, that maybe I would assume that he's talking to a lot of people around the league to see if they want to come here and be a part of this football team. So due diligence is always good, and it's even better now in that he's doing it and he's not losing other people.
Carey asks, the question is there a chance that guys like Belichick and Harbaugh and them aren't jumping at jobs, wondering if the Eagles' job comes open? I doubt that's the case. Like, I don't think that they're going, man, after watching what the Eagles did down the stretch, at the very least, there is extreme dysfunction in that roster. So I'm not sure that you're looking and going, they're rubbing their hands together going, oh, yeah, that Eagle job, that's the job. I could, I'll wait and see what somebody else is offering me.
I think it's still a really good job. I mean, look at the other jobs that are open out there. Is there a better one? If the Eagles fired their head coach, I mean, you have an offense that is loaded. You have a roster that we all thought, maybe we're idiots, but we all thought last year going into it, it's a team that could do really well. Do they have to plug some holes defensively? Absolutely. But so does every team, and especially a team that's looking for a new head coach. I mean, a team that's looking for a new head coach means they sucked or they weren't very good. They didn't meet expectations, so there's a lot of holes to fill. This team probably has fewer holes to fill than any other team looking for a head coach.
I think, though, the idea is that this roster would be harder to make over than some of these other teams that have the draft picks, have the cap space, have the freedom to be able to build what they want to build. Like, I don't know if anybody wants to work in Washington. They are, I mean, it has been a terrible franchise now for at least 2 decades, and they haven't made the NFC title game now in 33 years. So I don't know who's lining up and saying, that's the spot, that's it.
Yeah.
But you're going to get to draft your quarterback of the future. You're going to get to pick the guy you want. You have cap space. You've got a new owner who is going to look to make a splash. I wouldn't think that you're going to see them nickel and diamond on putting together a good coaching staff and everything like that. So it's just, I just wonder what Jeffrey Lurie's doing right now. I wonder what is the agenda, what is the plan, and I'm hoping we find something out today.
I think he's just doing due diligence, interviewing as many as he can, talking to Sirianni about which direction do you want to go, who are the people that you have on your list as far as offensive and defensive coordinators, what is your game plan for yourself moving forward, how are you going to use these people, what went wrong, like all of these things I think are getting done, and that's probably why we haven't really heard anything.
So you think the idea of staying with Sirianni, whose call's that? Pat, you have a theory?
Oh, it's Jeffrey Lurie.
So you think Jeffrey Lurie sees something and says, this is going to work out? Like, I'm trying to figure this out.
Well, he's the owner, so, I mean, it's definitely not just Howie. I mean, Jeffrey, I think, has got the perfect meld of being a hands-on owner, yet hands-off at the same time. He doesn't meddle so much where it's a distraction like a Jerry Jones, but he's not such an absentee owner that you sit there and question, all right, is he just collecting a paycheck? Like, I do think he cares. I think, though, he recognizes that he needs to stay in his lane at times. Ultimately, the buck stops with him, and if you're sitting in a room with him, he's going to make the final call, but he will have a team of advisors, and Howie Roseman's going to be heavily influenced in that, but ultimately, it's going to be his decision.
The decision to keep Nick Sirianni, again, and you can join us at 610-632-0975. I don't know who's going to be enthused by it. Like, if they are really doubling down on, we know better than you, if they bring him back, I don't think it's going to be a popular move. I don't think it's going to be well received by the fan base. So it better work, or they're going to lose a large modicum of trust. And the guy who's going to take the biggest bullet of all to me would be Howie Roseman. That it would be on that this is another guy that Howie thought was the guy, and he's not the guy. That Howie and Jeffrey Lurie thought was the guy. That is not the guy.
Well, the ultimate decision that comes down to the head coaching's future is on Jeffrey Lurie. I mean,
he's signing the check, right?
Yeah, I don't, nothing gets done without his approval, I don't think. Howie Roseman can pine for anyone or say he likes this one. Unless Jeffrey Lurie signs off on it, it doesn't happen. So, that comes with being the head of the franchise, that's going to fall on you. I don't know if this weekend entailed, look, you got to come in here and talk to me for a couple of days because your job's on the line. And Sirianni's doing that. And Jeffrey Lurie's still sitting back and wondering if he is the guy or not. like I said before, these last 6-7 weeks were horrible, but you can't forget about how many other weeks Nick Sirianni was the head coach and things were really, really good.
But I got to look at variables. I got to look and say when things were really, really good. And by the way, when they were 10-1, this team wasn't. You were the guy who saw it probably the clearest of anybody, as far as the but season that you kept referring to. That when the Sirianni variables are Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. That's that the team took off when Shane Steichen took over play calling, and things fell apart when Shane Steichen left. I mean, it's a.
He was still the head coach, though.
Yeah, I got you, but he didn't. But it's clear that he said to us in a press conference, "I'm not good at play. I found out I'm not really good at play calling, so I'm going to delegate it down, and Shane's going to take it over and everything." And then you heard, and I got to wonder, well, like how the story even went down that he did that, because now that's got to work against him. Because this year he showed us it again. When everything was on the line and everything was up on the grabs for the Eagles, he didn't take control of the wheel. And that's one of the things that Jeffrey Lurie needs to, and Howie Roseman, both of them need to be behind a microphone at some point and answer that question. When the building was burning, this guy did not know where the fire alarm was. This guy did not know where the hose was. He couldn't help put it out. In fact, it got worse. You lost to the Cardinals, then the Giants, then the Buccaneers. It got worse. It didn't get better. And he had no answers for any of it. I want to hear from the people who say it's good to bring him back as to why that is. I can't imagine.
You will. I mean, there will be an announcement, I'm sure, or coming out, an end-of-the-year wrap-up, whatever, however you want to design it or
script it?
We'll hear something. I mean, I don't think they're going to go into the off-season and all of that. Just we're not going to hear anything, and there's going to be an announcement here or there. It's incumbent upon them to talk and tell people what their feeling is. It's, that's how you hold on to the fan base. That's what they want to hear. They know that. So I assume that either Howie or Jeffrey Lurie or Nick Sirianni will come out and speak once things are all settled, and we'll get some answers to the questions. But I just want to see some really eye-opening hires as far as offensive and defensive coordinator. If you're not getting rid of that head coach, well, then I need to see really, really interesting and good hires on both sides of the ball.
So if you were Jeff Lurie, this is the way you would have handled it? Like, do you approve of the way this week, and we're approaching 7 days since the end of the game. Do you approve of the way that they've handled this week?
I'll let you know when the results come out. I mean, I don't know anything about how they've handled this week. I don't know any conversations that went on. I don't know what was said, what was done. I don't know who came in and out of the offices. I don't know anything. None of us does.
Do you approve of the owner going and laying on a beach after that Tampa Bay game? Getting on a plane and going on vacation? And
for a couple of days, yeah, I liked it because it wasn't a rash decision. I don't care if he's sitting at his house, he goes on a beach, sits in a bathroom. I don't.
Those are different choices, Bob.
I do like it. Yeah, there wasn't rashness to it, because if there was, he probably would have fired everybody. So I don't mind that he took a couple of days to sit back. And look, it's not like he's not informed of what other teams are doing. He's got feelers everywhere. So if he's confident that, okay, nobody's going to get hired in the meantime, I'm going to talk to somebody at the end of the week. They've told me they're not going to make a decision until we meet. He has all that information at his disposal.
Sense of urgency, Pat, seems to be lacking to me. And in a way, though I admire somebody taking some time to think about it, if he takes 7 days to figure out the future of Nick Sirianni, to me, it just seems like it's very much like what we said earlier. They don't care. They don't care what our timeline is. They don't care what the fan base is saying. They're not listening. And that drives me a little nuts.
Oh, as a fan, absolutely, it drives you nuts. But their track record of not listening to the fans is pretty good. So I don't blame them for sticking to their course that they normally would, because, if they listen to the fan base, then you would have gotten Ricky Williams over Donovan McNabb. You wouldn't have gotten Andy Reid. You would have probably gotten somebody else with a little bit of a track record. You wouldn't have gotten Doug Peterson. So my point is, it's very frustrating to us, yes, because we're fans. I would like some answers as well. And I'm going to be frustrated once they do eventually have this sit down and they're asked questions. Because the reality is, like, they're not going to answer any of the questions we want asked. They're going to sit there and get posed the question of, why'd you bring back Nick Sirianni? And we're going to get some chalk of, well, we have the ultimate faith in Nick Sirianni. We were never wavering. And we're not going to get the full story of it. But I do like the fact that Jeffrey Lurie did at least wait a few days, I think, to make a decision. I think it's been too many. Like, I like answers, but he doesn't necessarily owe it to me to give answers, because there's a reason why he's where he is and I'm where I'm at. And he also knows that I'm going to be there on Sundays in September and October and November and December.
Well, you didn't inherit a production company.
I trust me, I curse my father every single day for that.
There are reasons why. It's not all the reasons that he's just so much brighter than you. There are things that.
My dad texted me today, and
even though I do think he is.
Where's my production company?
Where is this? I'm going to say this. People talk about, like, well, you can trust these guys because of their hiring practices. Their last 3 hires, Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, and now potentially Nick Sirianni, all have crashed and burned in different ways. Though Sirianni and Doug Peterson absolutely burned bright, something broke down within those buildings. Something broke down in a decade's time. In 1 decade, we now see a third head coach that there just seems to be something going on in that building. And I got to wonder if there are mirrors involved, that the leadership of this team has something to do with it. That working for Howie Roseman, working for Jeffrey Lurie, that within that organization, why you can't sustain success like they did with Andy Reid.
It's a fair question. It absolutely is a fair question, and we've brought it up before too. Is there something going on in there that makes things go well for a couple of years, and then it seems to turn and burn? But one thing I wanted to say about these hirings. All right, so the defensive side of the ball is wide open.
Wide open.
You don't have a coordinator right now. Could it be a case where Jeffrey Lurie might be waiting? Brian Johnson's interviewed with 3, maybe 4?
I think 5 teams.
5? Okay. Could it be that Jeffrey Lurie's waiting for him to get hired by somebody else?
Oh,
is
absolutely.
there something that,
because you get a draft pick.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe he's being smart waiting that out also, and maybe he's got somebody. Look, we don't know. This has happened so many times where I've seen a team either bring a player in or a coach in or something like that, and then talk behind the scenes to a general manager and say, man, that came about all of a sudden. No, we've been talking to him for like months. We don't know. They could have a deal already done with somebody, and that's why we're not hearing anything.
And they're just waiting for Brian Johnson.
Yeah, could be.
The one thing I would just say is that the applause for their hiring practices, that's 3 hires in gosh, it's 10 years. It's less than 10 years. Now you have Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, and potentially Nick Sirianni. You have 3 houses that ended on fire with the head coaching hires.
I'm okay with that.
Something breaks down, though.
It does, but like I'd rather have that. I'd rather have like the fire that burns really bright and then just is
crashes
snuffed out than an Arthur Smith situation in Atlanta, which wasn't good for 3 years.
Oh, no question.
I'd rather at least have like because I mean, ultimately, when you look at Nick Sirianni's tenure, if he were fired today, it would literally be like a bad 7-week to start and 7-week to end it. And
it's the Oreo, right?
Yeah, the middle of it was great. But when you look at the percentage of suck, it wouldn't be that much. So I'd much rather have, the Chip Kelly, Sirianni, and Doug Peterson over, just a guy that gets in there and you immediately go like, man, this is rough.
Yeah, look at it this way. If I were to say to you guys, you've had one coach over the last 7 years that has won you a Super Bowl and gotten you to another one, I think we'd all be like, oh, cool. It just so happens it's been 2 coaches. Over 7 years, you've won a Super Bowl.
Blow it up?
That doesn't matter. Almost. That's what I'm saying. Not that it doesn't matter. Yeah, there's something there. Why does this happen? All of that. But in their minds, is it, you're going to complain? In 7 years, we've won a Super Bowl and been to another. If that was one head coach or 7 different head coaches, aren't you happy with that success? I mean, 2 Super Bowls in 7 years isn't bad.
See, I would look at it as there's dysfunction in the building somehow.
Sure.
That you can't sustain excellence.
Yeah.
That there's some reason, whatever you learn, whatever lessons you learn, you forget them.
Yeah, but if I'll take 85% success, 15% horribleness any day. I mean, those percentages are pretty good. So while it sucks that you can't sustain the success that you had early on in your career for whatever reason, whether it be leaks or leadership or message. I'd still take that over a tenure of just like Drek.
Can we agree, though, that the reason this organization has been one of the best in the NFL had a lot to do with the guy that was on the sideline last night and won another playoff game with the Chiefs? That Andy Reid's influence on this organization, stability in this organization, stuff that he put in place, ideas that he put in place are the reason that we're still successful today here.
Oh, yeah, I don't even think that's a question.
But they've went away from that. For some reason, they went away from having the guy that they tossed the keys. I think they gave Andy control like third year of personnel, maybe his third year on the job. They gave him the higher say in personnel, where he was having a say in exactly who was drafted and everything. I think it was his third season. And they've moved away from that model. They moved away from a powerful, strong-willed guy that would be large and in charge, and gone to more of the quote-unquote lackey approach. Somebody who's going to carry out the plan that they come up with and do their thing. Andy Reid didn't do that. Andy Reid had his own plan. It's totally different when you're hiring guys that they're hiring today. And there's a reason that they look for that. And that, to me, is they want the control. They want control.
A lackey.
Well, I mean,
that's a harsh word there. It's saying your head coach is just a lackey.
He's going to carry out your plan. A lackey carries out your plans. A lackey does what you tell them to do. I don't
know about that. I don't know. Yeah, we do know that Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman do want control, and we've heard that they're not going to hire a defensive coordinator that doesn't buy into their philosophy. But I don't look, evidence says that maybe it is, but I don't think they're getting a head coach and saying, okay, you're going to do this, and this is how the game plan's going to go. I don't know about that.
Hey,
I just don't know.
If you want to vent, you can at 610-632-0975. Honestly, we're still waiting. And in your thoughts on that, your thoughts on why now these coaching hires tend to burn out. And Pat makes a good point, though. You like the success when it's happening. And then I just got to wonder what breaks down and what makes it happen. Fanatic Mondays are presented by Pierce Phelps, Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Visit nopaybryant.com and get flexible spending options on a new heating and cooling system. Well, one of our winter teams had a great weekend. One of our winter teams did not. And at the top of the hour, Bob noticed something about how the teams were built this weekend that managed to have some great success. We'll talk about it next. John Kincade Show here on 90.
ESPN HD1, Burlington, Philadelphia. A Beasley Media Group station. Broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studios. Powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. The John Kincade Show with Bob Cooney and Pat Egan continues. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
When you saw that the Flyers had a home and home this weekend and two home games, this weekend, and the Sixers had two road games, it looked like it would be a pretty good weekend for the boys on the ice, and the boys in the court may have a little bit of a harder time. But Sixers win back-to-back Friday night and Saturday, and then the Flyers managed to lose to a really good Colorado team on Saturday. But the Sunday loss yesterday to Ottawa, not nearly as good. Got to enjoy a lot of all four of those games this weekend. And let's start with the good news. Good news first. Sixers was there's nothing Joel Embiid can't do. Let's put it this way. There's nothing he can't do when he wants to. And he is an ascending player. And I find that hard to believe this far into his career that he is still an ascending guy as far as his talents and what he's bringing to the table.
Yeah, he's so much fun to watch right now, and I loved what he said, I think, after Friday's game, that with the rest that he's able to get in the fourth quarter because the team's doing so well and all that, there's no reason he can't play back-to-backs, and he's talking about, like, it's full bore, unless something's wrong, I'm playing. And that was good to see. And Saturday, Charlotte's not very good.
Was Kyle there, by the way? I was wondering if Kyle was there. I was going to text you.
It was funny. My son Kyle went to – so Charlotte was home on Friday against San Antonio. That was in his season ticket plan. And he texted me. He goes, "Can you believe it? They're not playing him." And they sat Wembanyama on Friday night. So he didn't get to see him. And then he saw Sixers at Charlotte already this year, and that wasn't part of his package on Saturday. So, no, he didn't. But, two, good games. You just have to be methodical. You have to be professional. You're the better team in both of those games. Go and win them, and then come home. And that's what they did. And now they have a home game tonight against the Spurs.
And you get to we should see the young phenom, Wembanyama, tonight, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, so I'll be down there tonight. I can't wait to see this guy. I'm anxious to see him warm up. I'm going to get down there early to talk to some people. I'm anxious to see him warm up before the game, just because that's cool to watch a skill set by itself. When guys are warming up and doing things. Like I told you before, whenever the Sixers would play Golden State, watching Steph Curry's warm up was one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. And it started years ago, and it was by accident, in Golden State, when I watched him warm up, and I was like, oh, my God. And he took the shot from the tunnel, and then from then on, it was must-see basketball for me.
He looks so slight to me, Wembanyama. Like he looks like he has he's a work in progress physically. But, man, he is quite the talented player. So it'll be a fun night tonight. You'll hear it on The Fanatic, too.
Yeah, tonight will be cool. It'll be good to get a look at that.
And those are two nice wins. You're at the halfway point of the season. And the Sixers,
on pace for 56 wins, John.
Correct. And you're third place in the Eastern Conference. And but you're right there with Milwaukee. And honestly, you've been better than Milwaukee in the last 20. So you're trending in the right direction as far as things go. And so pretty exciting times for the Sixers. See if they can keep it going. February the 8th, by the way. I think that's the trade deadline.
Yep.
February. That seems
quickly approaching.
Okay, that's way early. Isn't
I don't know. No, normally it's like the first or second week of.
No, it's always that time.
So
Yeah,
it's always like the 8th of February.
Yeah, because Harden. I want to say Harden got traded like February 5th or 6th.
Really?
Yeah, I think
Super Bowl week?
Yeah, let me look. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see, because it seems strange to me.
I remember the James Harden trade going down around that time. So yeah, it's usually the first week. But
I thought it was February, but that just seems way early to me. And honestly, it rushes Nick Nurse and some of these, and Daryl Morey with some of these decisions. But as you say, Bob, they're probably having conversations every day about what they could potentially need or what they could potentially add. But other contenders are trying to add players and are already adding players.
Harden trade went down February 10th.
February 10th, so it's right there.
There you go.
Same week.
Yeah. It was funny. We had Daryl Morey on the other night when we did the Sixers Gala, and that's what I said to him. I said, injuries I know are a part of the season, all of that. but you're still trying to figure this team out. Nick Nurse is changing the starting lineup on the fly, and you haven't had DeAnthony Melton, who either is going to be a key part of your starting rotation or what I think is going to be a key part of your subs. How do you view the team, and how do you know what you need moving forward if you can't see these guys out on the floor all the time? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of tricky, but it's something I have to do. And whether it's a big piece, a smaller piece, we'll have to see how it plays out before, February 8th comes.
I mean, it's 2 weeks. It is 2 weeks from Thursday. I mean, it's incredible. Like, the time is really ticking down on being able to make one of those kind of moves. 7 o'clock hour is brought to you by the all-new Bet Parks app, sportsbook and casino in one sleek, easy-to-use app in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And, Pat, I had no problem with the Flyers' loss Saturday, but the Flyers' loss yesterday sucked. That Ottawa team is not very good.
No, they're quite bad.
And you get out to a 2-0 lead, and then they were sloppy yesterday. And that was uncharacteristic of them. And they were sloppy on Saturday, too. I just want to I'm hoping this isn't the point where they start to leak a little oil. Because that's 2 home games.
Even if they do, I mean, it's not the end of the world. You know, this season is a really, really good season for Flyers fans in the sense that if they lose, you go, okay, kind of supposed to. Expectations weren't very high. And if they win, which they've been doing a lot, you go like, wow, like they're showing me something. So when you have a loss like this weekend, I mean, the Avs are loaded. They're one of the best teams in the NHL. They're a Stanley Cup favorite. But when you have a loss like you do against the Sens, like you kind of just go, okay, like I've expected this more than I expected what I've seen this season, which is, second or third place, whatever they're at now in the Metro. So it's only frustrating, I think, if you have bought into them being a playoff team.
Right. It was funny. I watched Saturday's game, and you're just little mistakes are exploited against a Colorado team.
Oh, yes.
So you're playing not to make those mistakes. And you could tell the Flyers were playing. I don't want to say they were playing more not to lose than to win, but they were very guarded against any kind of mistake that was made, any kind of outlet pass that was stolen. You could see how much better Colorado just is. And then yesterday, to me, watching that whole game seemed like that was a tired legs game. We just came against a team that we couldn't give up a mistake, and now today that feeling is all gone. It's just tired legs day. That's what it seemed to me. You had a horrible turnover that led to the goal
when it was 2-0, that was the first goal. Zamula had the horrible turnover. He had already provided 2 goals, and then he gave up the turnover that led to
I learned a new rule in the NHL.
Zamula giveth, the Zamula taketh away.
Well, it's funny because on the Zamula first goal, you heard the whistle before it went in the net. And I'm watching it, and my wife was like, what was that? I said, no, it's not a goal. The whistle blew. But as long as the puck's going into the net before a whistle blows, it's still okay.
Continued
now,
play.
It not only happened once, it happened twice in yesterday's game. So, yesterday was that was a bad loss. But it's on the back-to-back, 24 hours later. After playing a really good team, it's almost understandable. The thing that I garner from this weekend, though, is how is Carter Hart going to react? He gave up some not great goals against Colorado, gets pulled after the second period. He goes with Ersan in the third. They get it back to 5-4, and then he goes with Ersan yesterday. I just wonder, where's the psyche of Carter Hart moving forward?
Well, I mean, and again, Carter Hart is still having a really, really good year, but Ersan's having a better season. He's having a better season. Yet people are just, any criticism of Carter Hart is met with like clutching of pearls. There's just, oh my gosh, how can you criticize him? I mean, Ersan's having the better season, point blank. And that doesn't mean that Carter Hart's having a crappy season. It just means that that's where it is. But you're going to need both of them if you want to have success. So you're hoping that both of them can be on track and can have a great run here.
Or you sell one of them and get some players for them to have better success.
They could. Hey, there is one thing, Bob, as you were watching the games this weekend that you were interested in, is this looking at how these teams sort of were built and what these teams brought to the table, because they don't look like the Eagles. They really don't.
No, I mean, it was so blatantly obvious, and you don't have to. We saw what these last 7 weeks were, and it was mind-boggling where this team went. but like just the design of, and I'm just talking offense here because the Eagles defense doesn't compare to anyone because they're crap. But just looking at these offense, and don't forget you have an offense of Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert and a good offensive line.
DeAndre Swift.
I mean, yeah. You look at these teams and the way they're running offense, and it's like, do the Eagles coaches go to the same school of coaching as these other offensive coordinators? Because they were things of beauty. And even when they weren't working, they were miles and miles ahead of what this offense looked like with the Eagles this year. And for all talk of Brian Johnson coming back or Jalen Hurts had a horrible year, I hear you. And Jalen Hurts did not play well this year. And I am not, giving a pass to the players for what they did. But my God, the design of offenses this weekend was so much better than anything we saw all year with the Eagles. All year. It was light years ahead of what anything the Eagles tried to do this year offensively.
I am if there is movement from Nick Sirianni, which, by the way, I never expected we were going to be talking about a potential head coaching change, and until we find out for sure, I still think it's potential that it could happen. If I want an offensive coach, I want a guy who runs his offense. I want a guy who can call his own plays. And I watched that Baltimore offense. And I watched what Todd Monken's done with Baltimore on Saturday afternoon. And I see in the midst of drives how many times, and it might be for 2 plays, it might be for 1 play, it might be for 3 plays, how one snap, here is Lamar Jackson in shotgun. Oh, wait a minute, he's under center. Oh, and then he's doing a run-pass option. And, wait a minute, now he's back in shotgun. Oh, wait a minute. Now they get in the red zone. He's under center. And he's under center from the 7-yard line. The way they mix things up is something you never see from the Eagles. They don't give you different looks. They don't confuse anybody. And then you watch Saturday night, and they pointed it out on the broadcast. How many times, as Greg Olson was pointing out, how many times Kyle Shanahan's offense, and I say it all the time, throws out of run formations and runs out of passing formations. It's not hard, Pat. It's not hard to be able to figure out how you masquerade stuff, how you confuse people. And it seems like that's something that the Eagles just didn't have with their coordinators on either side of the ball this year, honestly.
No, it was a bleep show this entire year when it came to execution and game planning and all that, which is a shame because we saw a year ago was a completely different story. I mean, you saw what happened when you had competent coordinators doing the job last year. It was an offense that just they put up points at an incredible rate. Statistically, defensively, they put up stats at a historic rate. So to see what it was and then what it became, man, it was depressing because you're right. It's and I think back to watching the game with Tunis a week ago. Him just saying, here we go. Here's going to be a bubble screen because they want to keep it in bounds and they want to put it in Tampa Bay in a situation where if they can't pick up the first down, Tampa Bay has to use a timeout. Sure enough, he was dead on accurate. And as soon as the play was ran, Tunis said, "I'm not some genius. I'm a dude in a bar," and I knew what was coming. And it just seemed like as the games went on and we got further into the season, that became more the norm. Is the everyman who worked a normal job knew exactly what was coming. So why do you think that the football coach who's dedicating, 15 hours a day to figuring out what you're going to do, why do you think that that's going to be any different for him? What, you think that you're going to catch him by surprise by doing a bubble screen? I can't wait to get a new coordinator in here.
Well, that's why I
can't wait.
Well, that's what I don't understand unless they are totally taking away every single bit of control that Nick Sirianni has and bringing in a guy who is going to have complete autonomy with this offense, then I just don't understand. I don't understand how you can sell to your fan base or can try to convince people that, yeah, this is why we want this guy back. Because it's so obvious when you watch these games. It's terrible. The offense this year was terrible. The offense of the Bills last night, they made a change in season, and it was excellent to watch. The Chiefs offense with Andy, we always know, is going to be creative and different. I mean, the Eagles are behind the 8 ball here, but a year ago, they were one of the leaders.
Yeah, and you saw playmakers making plays. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. It was just really, even Baker Mayfield. It was good stuff. Like, improvising and playing to their strengths and allowing them to be the playmakers they are. I still am amazed going back and seeing highlights of Jalen Hurts in last season's year where he just moved so much better than he did this year. I mean, I equate it to, now this isn't the case. I really do. I equate it to someone putting on 30 pounds and not being able to move as well as they did 30 pounds later. He didn't. It's not that. But, man, when you go back and look at 2022 highlights compared to this season's highlights of him running the football,
it's completely
God,
different.
is it night and day. And I don't know why. I don't know if Brian Johnson curtailed him from running, if he was looking to go down quicker than, he did prior. I don't know if it's an injury. Are we going to hear that left knee is going to get, some surgical repair during this offseason? I don't know. But if you go back and look at it, it is eye-opening.
The 30-pound comment really hit home for me, Bobby. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I was thinking of you and Jamie in the race. He would have beat you if he was 30 pounds
Metabolism
lighter.
really slowed down for yours truly. But, it's interesting because this offense should have been better than last year. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are under 25 years old. Like, they haven't reached their prime. You swapped out Miles Sanders for DeAndre Swift.
Who's better?
I mean, yeah. Like, different running backs, but better. Your offense theoretically should have been better. And it looked like a shell of itself. It looked like a shell of what we saw go to the Super Bowl. And it seemed like scheme, and now we're hearing players weren't buying in. Shocker there. I wasn't buying in either as a fan. So it just seemed like if they had just made better coordinator decisions, we never would have gotten there. But they somehow struck out twice in a situation where you couldn't afford to strike out twice. If they hit on one of these coordinators, if Brian Johnson ended up being good, or if Sean Desai ended up being good,
they win one extra game, or maybe two.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think it would have been a different story, but you struck out on both of them.
And the same people are making the calls again. The same guys are making the calls again. And, it is and many will point the finger at Gannon, and he definitely gets some of the blame on the defensive coordinator hiring. Absolutely gets some of that blame. That's on him, not being above board in what his tactics were.
It is, but he's like fifth on my list.
Okay, no, but I mean,
when
it
you
is
have
part
Denard
of it,
Wilson
though. They were behind, right?
And look, and for all we know, Denard Wilson could be defensive Brian Johnson. Because a year ago, we were sitting here going, look, I mean, you're going to replace Shane Steichen with Brian Johnson, not a problem. He moves right in. He knows the game plan. He knows what worked. And he was a disaster. So for all we know, Denard Wilson is going to end up being him. I hope not, if they end up hiring him. But, I don't necessarily blame Jonathan Gannon so much. When you went out and you hired a defensive coordinator who in two different stops, Chicago and Seattle, his defenses weren't very good, or his group that he was working with, secondary group, wasn't very good, and you just bought in because Pete Carroll gave his stamp of approval. Well, there's a surprise. I mean, that's what coaches do. They give your stamp of approval so it looks better on their resume. When you buy into that, that's on you. Like, you can sit there and point the finger at Jonathan Gannon. I mean,
no, I got you.
And by the way, and people will, but for me, he's like fourth or fifth on my list. Should he have done what he did? No. But ultimately, if he left a week early, you might have still ended up with Sean Desai. It sucks, but they should have been prepared for that situation anyway. And it's not like Vic Fangio's defense looked incredible in Miami.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, this is sports in a nutshell. So Buffalo misses a field goal, a very makeable field goal yesterday. They make that. They go on to win that game. There's no talk in Buffalo today about coaching changes, whether it's offensive, defensive coordinator, head coach. Heads have to roll. They can't get past Kansas City. So what are you going to do with this organization in order to put them ahead of Kansas City? I mean, that's sports. It can be really, really good, and then it isn't, and this changes.
Oh, Buffalo is the Philadelphia 76ers of the NFL.
Yeah, right, kind of.
And the
Can you imagine the frustration up there?
The Chiefs are the Boston Celtics, and the Bills are the Sixers.
Well, too. I mean, Green Bay lost the same way on Saturday night. Kicker misses a field goal. That game could have been in overtime.
Good point.
And Jordan Love with a terrible
As soon as he wound up to throw that, I was like, no, I swear to God, as soon as he wound up to throw, I was like, no, out loud. And sure enough, thrown across your body, across the field,
Into the middle of the field, too. It's just, he made a rookie. He made it, even though he's a fourth-year player, and a lot of people forget that. He's not a rookie.
No.
But he's a guy who he should have known better on that throw. But again, he was a huge reason about why they were even in that game and why they were there.
Yeah.
But it's like it shows you the littlest things can take it from chance to win, chance to lose. And right now, this Eagles team, we await. I wonder, do we expect news today? Do you expect we're going to get news today, Pat?
No.
Bob, we get news today? It's been 7 days. We get news?
I'm putting it as an absolute maybe.
Absolute maybe.
Come on, Bob.
I mean, it's just.
I don't know. Yeah, my reasoning is because nothing else has been done throughout the league. There's no other coaches getting hired. There's no other, coordinators going this way or that way, or big names are falling here and there. If they were, then I would be more towards yes. But as long as other names aren't falling to other places, I don't know when it's going to happen.
But other coaches have spoken at the end of their seasons and spoken and done the year-end wrap-up. We're still waiting for it, and I just wonder if it's being scripted. I just wonder if we're going to see Nick Sirianni up there with a teleprompter.
And I think once he does talk, we're going to be as frustrated as we were when he didn't talk.
You want to share some of your frustrations, you can at 610-632-0975. It has been a week without information. What's shocking is, why is this guy such a hot commodity? And what does it say about the Eagles' offense? John Kincade Show on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Some coach.
has spoken with the Titans and the Falcons. And I mean, he's all over the place. He is one of the hottest candidates for head coaching interviews in the entire NFL. That he's a guy that is that very well may get hired in this sequence of hiring of even though this year was, by I think everyone's assessment here in Philadelphia, pretty much an abject failure the way that things were handled. Does it tell you that there is something that there's something going on, that maybe it is all on Nick Sirianni? And more importantly, when Jeffrey Lurie gets all these requests that Brian Johnson is the hottest, candidate thrown out there, why in the world would you not say to yourself, wait a minute, so the rest of the NFL thinks Brian Johnson is not the problem, yet I'm keeping Nick Sirianni?
No, I don't care what other people think. I saw with my own eyes that this guy was just not the man for the job. Other people might think he's a head coach. Good for you. I already saw that he can't be an offensive coordinator. So no, I don't worry about that. I see that the players didn't play up to snuff under his tutelage. So I don't care. And let's just is the Rooney Rule still a thing, right? I mean,
It is,
and
but
maybe some people have to fill that quota, and he's the hot guy to fill it.
The only thing
I don't like that. Let's
know.
just hire people that are, good enough for anything, and hopefully Brian Johnson's good enough for something and whatever. I don't think he's good enough to be the offensive coordinator here right now. I don't think he's a hot prospect to be a head coach. I don't.
So you
I
don't expect
understand.
him to get hired?
Would you?
I don't know. I mean, because when I see this many interviews, I don't want to just put it out there that, well, Brian Johnson's getting interviewed because of the Rooney Rule. Because I think that's a little demeaning to him.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And what he's accomplished. But when I see, if it was one interview, Bob, two interviews, when it's just team after team wanting to talk to him, that to me is a little surprising. Let's put it this way.
I would be more surprised if he gets a head coach. I would be shocked if he gets a head coaching job. After his performance last year in this city with that offense, yeah, I would be shocked if he got a head coaching job. You used the term a lot during the season, head over his skis or whatever.
Yeah.
He seemed that way. And the continuous calling of plays that didn't work all season long. And just there didn't seem to be a modicum of I don't know, goodness in this offense. And then you look at these games this weekend and you see the designs and the different plays and the great play calling and teams that are committed to do one thing and keep doing it successfully because they're committed to it. Like, none of those things rang true to me as far as Brian Johnson went.
Fanatic Mondays are presented by Pierce Phelps Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Visit nopaybryant.com for flexible spending options on a new heating and cooling system. Now, there is a new, and I would say, I don't want to use the word bombshell article, column out there written by Joe Santoliquito for Bleeding Green Nation. And a few years ago, you guys were on the job. Both of you were working this shift when the story came out about Carson Wentz that Joe had penned. Correct? You were on the air that day, right?
Yeah,
right
I don't think I was, but I was at the station.
Right, you were at the station.
Yeah, I've been here a minute.
I want to make it clear before any commentary on it that Joe and I were classmates at O'Hara. I've known Joe since I was 14 years old. I have a great fondness for him. Reading this piece on Bleeding Green Nation, you can check it out, bleedinggreennation.com, a closer look at the 2023 Eagles' historic collapse. You cannot help but draw parallels to the same sort of article that was written about Carson Wentz and what Carson Wentz had happened to him around the Eagles and how that sort of led to the team's breakdown and failure. There are parallels, though everyone that there are a couple people that are referenced in the piece that have said, do not say that this guy is like Carson Wentz because he's got more fight to him. He doesn't sag when things get tough. So people that were even being critical, but there's a lot of critical commentary on the quarterback in the piece, saying that the $255 million contract extension changed him. that changed Jalen Hurts. He had less accessibility to media, fans, and teammates, according to numerous sources. He was, we all know what his personality is like and everything, but the Carson Wentz as a teammate was a guy who alienated a lot of people. This is not the same situation, but there was like players wanting him to come out, Jalen Hurts this year, and Jalen Hurts not wanting to be a part of it. Jalen Hurts being described as aloof, but a good dude, but aloof. And a quote saying he does not realize the times that he's acting like a prima donna jerk. And that says he has been described as detached, stoic, isolated, and unapproachable. That is, and when Joe Santoliquito came with some of this stuff about Wentz, he was attacked for it. It ended up that a lot of that stuff, almost all of it, ended up being true. And ended up being what happened.
I attacked Joe that very day, and I spoke with him the next day about why I attacked him. I thought the article on Wentz was, and I told him so, like I needed more. Why didn't you talk to the Eagles? Why didn't you talk to Wentz? Why did you come with this story on, where so many sources but not get solid? You got to keep going with it. You had to talk to the Eagles. You had to talk to Wentz. You had to talk to Doug Peterson at the time. And he agreed with me. He said, I ran with it quicker than I wanted to. You're right. I should have talked to more people. And that's okay, I guess. These kind of things, when things go bad, if you're looking for stuff, okay. I could do a story on Pat Egan right now and go to
Pat,
people and have people say,
this is a threat.
And I started with saying,
I'm
Pat's not having a good run at the station. What do you have to say about him? And, I could probably find people that'll say, yeah, I could do a story on myself that people would say, yeah, Bob's not that good of a guy, that Pat puts him out. I just like
Seems
these kind of pieces. It's easy to do when things are going bad. It's just easy to do.
Can I ask who you're talking to about this story?
One thing
they're calling me, Pat. I don't have to call them.
I think it's Stacy from HR, Pat.
Yeah, exactly. Stacy McKinney.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I'm looking at the piece, and one thing I did notice, Bob, and you're more the journalist. I don't consider myself a journalist doing this job. I noticed the same sort of things being lacking. I don't see where the Eagles were asked to comment on the story.
Yeah, I mean, he had a quote from Jalen Hurts in it. Sorry, John. He had a quote from Jalen Hurts in it, which was a generic quote. I don't know if Joe sat down with him and talked to him, but I'd like to see a lot of sources there, and I understand the source. I get a little turned off as a former reporter and as a reader now when it's just anonymous source after anonymous source after anonymous source after anonymous source. Like, all right, go to Nick Sirianni and say, hey, look, I've had players tell me that he's this, he's that, he's the other. My thing is, I want specific responses to what these anonymous sources are telling me.
That's
just what I like. I'm not giving a lesson in journalism at all. I'm just saying what I like personally.
But knowing Joe's track record of getting pretty good success with this stuff, I wonder is how much of this and how much even of the anonymous sources that are giving this information to Joe are telling the truth, that this is how they really feel. Because one thing I can see is if someone told me that Jalen Hurts was detached and not as not as connected to his teammates as in previous years, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked at all. Watching his demeanor on the sidelines, I said it this year. His demeanor on the sidelines sucked. It was terrible.
It was last year too, but nobody said anything because he was 14-3.
No, because I said just look at the 3 postseason games last year, and I just happened to watch. That's what I went looking for. He was talking during the breaks. He was talking during the change of possessions. He was on there on the sidelines looking at a iPad, talking to Brian Johnson some of the time, talking to other people. This year it became just sit there and mope. Just sit and mope on the sidelines. And to me, that's really surprising to me.
I didn't notice that last year that he taught. Last year, I thought we were talking about he just goes there, and if things are going great or things are going bad, he never changes his tone on the sideline, just sitting there. I don't remember this year being different than last year. I don't. I see it all the time. Him going to the sidelines and sits by himself with that blank stare.
When you see this, do you tend to believe it or you tend to not believe it? Pat, tend to believe these kind of things, assertions against Jalen Hurts, or do you tend to not believe them?
There's somewhere in the middle there. It kind of reminds you of the highs and lows of just sports, where something kitschy, like him staring off into space, is looked at favorably when the team is winning, and looked at as a negative when the team is losing. When the team's winning, it's, oh, my God, look, he's unflappable. And then when the team's losing, it's, all right, bud, can you show some emotion? It's
a double standard.
Yeah, it reminds me of the situation of Carter Hart. Like, how many Flyers fans you hear, love the fact that, oh, he's been seeing a sports psychologist since he was 12. And I was sitting there going, that's kind of weird.
I think it's
That's kind of weird that he was seeing. That's not a good sign. And this is nothing against Carter Hart, but it was like when he was the savior, it's looked at favorably. And then when he had that bad stretch under Alain Vigneault, it was like, man, that's really bizarre that he was seen as. Can you believe he was seen as a sports psychologist? Well, I guess we know why now. It's the double-edged sword of victory versus defeat. And I see. It seems like I quote this once a week at this point, but it's the scene from Bull Durham. Like, if you win 20 games in the show, having mold on your shower shoes is kitschy. But if you lose 20 games in the show, well, having mold on your shower shoes, now you're a slob.
Let's see what Tom in Alabama has to say. Tom, good morning. You're on the Fanatic.
Morning.
Hi, Thomas. Hope you're feeling well.
Thank you. Yourself as well. Hey, the first thing I remember, my first impression when Hurts took under center right after Wentz got sacked in the end zone, was that he was talking to Peterson as, the defense was out there during the play. And, that was the first thing we said. Well, we hadn't seen that in a long time. And now till you go to his actions, but more so, and I say this to you, John, because you know him, you've been watching Hurts longer than I have, which is from the beginning. And I would have never have had anything else. Now, in a Philadelphia Eagle playoff game, 2 players to bring prior to being sacked in the end zone, he could have sent a message which needed to be sent in that particular case by, if nothing else, throwing a block, throwing his hands up.
Yeah, he didn't.
Instead, he went away and did nothing. Maybe I don't know if that should have sealed Sirianni's fate right there.
And the safety was a very uncharacteristic play. Thank you, Tommy. Was an uncharacteristic play of Jalen Hurts, especially on a big stage. One thing I from watching Jalen's college career, every snap, from now watching in the pros, that was surprising to me, because he usually shows out on a big stage, and he didn't look engaged Monday night. Troy Aikman said it at what point. This team looks defeated, and they were from the time that they showed up for the game.
Yeah, there was nothing there to grasp onto. And I think national people coming in and watching it were like, wow, we know they've lost some games recently, but they are just not there. I'll still say it, lost. This team was just absolutely lost. And I don't think they could have played anybody on that Monday night and won the game. I really don't. I mean, you could have brought in the Carolina Panthers, anyone. That's how bad this team was playing at the end of the season.
Leonard's on the line. Leonard, good morning. You're on the Fanatic.
Hey, good morning, guys. So, just think about what we're talking about. We're talking about the play of Jalen Hurts. We're talking about the play of the entire team. That is an indictment on a coach. You just don't go from one play, from winning the Super Bowl and potentially the Super Bowl MVP, to not knowing how to play anymore. It doesn't make sense, and that's why he has to go. Sirianni's going to be a hate to face. It doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter what – and even when the coordinator's coming in, what is his role? He is a hate to face. He doesn't have answers, and I don't understand why it's taking this long to even come out, because they know they have to tell this fan base with this conference that, why are we keeping? They have no answer.
That's
why this conference is delayed.
That's what I say. I don't think they have an answer. That's why we haven't heard from them. We've had other teams. We've had other teams eliminated from the playoffs. Other teams that went to the playoffs and gotten eliminated, and their coaches have sat behind on the dais. Their general managers have sat there. They've answered questions. They've talked about what the plan. This team, they're scripting something. I don't think they may think it's a Netflix series.
Exactly, and it's just so refreshing to actually see NFL playoff games where there are competent coaches, there are competent plays. I mean, like if you look at just any of the plays and from any of the games, they have competent coordinators, competent coaches, and I'm upset that Andy Reid is not on this team to right this ship again. So. Yeah,
I was ready, and I appreciate your call, Leonard. I was ready at the time, Bob. I can't do revisionist history because I was ready for Andy to leave when Andy left. Like I didn't like I wasn't one of those. I wasn't going, oh man, they can't let Andy go. But as it showed, Kansas City snatched him up within 24 hours. But I've seen other teams eliminated this year's playoff cycle, and they've talked. Like I don't think they have an answer for us. Because if the answer is we're bringing back Nick Sirianni, you better script something great. This isn't a stupid fan base. They're going to understand that you're bringing back a guy, and again, the emperor has no clothes. He has not come up with a plan to fix his ship when he had the opportunity to do so.
At this point, I think we just have to wrap our heads around he is coming back. Because it has been.
It does seem. Yes. Well, it was 8 days for Doug.
Yeah. But if the reports are true, I don't know why they wouldn't be. That he's the one who reached out to coordinators but by the way, that was before he met with Jeffrey Lurie, but he was also dictated that, you have to fire your coordinator. Okay, fine. Keep your job, it seemed like. Seems like he is going the opposite way of Doug Peterson. And that might be because Doug was burnt out here. Right. If you remember, like the whole storyline was that Doug Peterson was refusing to fire like Press Taylor.
Right.
Move on from him. So Doug's probably doing that because, one, he's probably burnt out. Two, he wants control of personnel. And three, he knew he would get a job if he wanted to. He took a year off. He went to Turks and Caicos and sat on a
Fort
beach.
Lauderdale.
And then ends up in Duval County. So but I think if Doug Peterson wanted to come back the next year, he would have had a job. He won a Super Bowl.
If he was willing to throw other people under the bus.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't.
But he wouldn't do it. So I think Nick Sirianni's like,
Sirianni's like, hey,
I don't know if I get another job, a head coaching job, so I'll keep this one, right? I'll whatever you want, Mr. Lurie.
Here comes the SEPTA bus.
Well, and it's also funny for Jeffrey Lurie. It's easy for us to go from one way to another, from week to week and all. I mean, it was talked about on this show not long ago. Could this guy be the best head coach this team has ever had? And now here it is 7 weeks later, and it's like, how come they haven't fired him yet? It's easy for us to do because that's how we react. It's probably not as easy for an owner to do. There's some investment in there, yeah.
Mark's on the Fanatic. Mark, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
Good, buddy.
All right. You guys were talking earlier about Brian Johnson getting all these head coaching interviews, and I don't know if you discussed this angle, but he is a known name that satisfies the Rooney Rule.
Oh, yeah. Bob brought that up, and then we talked about it, yes.
So with that,
I think that's a demeaning thing to Brian Johnson, though.
I mean,
to sort of not bring it up because it is a fact, but just the idea is it sounds demeaning to me to say, hey, Brian Johnson's getting in interviews because of the fact that he is an African American candidate.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but you can't go away from the fact that this team has looked terrible with all this talent, and he's the offensive coordinator, and he's getting all these interviews. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It certainly does. It certainly doesn't make any sense. It makes none.
No. Is there anything about his performance this year that made you say, "Oh, you know what? He needs to move up in the rankings"? No. It didn't. And sometimes maybe it's that obvious. And why is he getting all these interviews? Well, he was a hot name before this season started, and everybody said if he has a good season, he's probably going to be moving on. He didn't have a good season.
No.
And the players under him didn't have a good season. And cast blame on coaches or players, they both get it. Like I said 100 times within the last week, you can get 1,000 people to point fingers at anybody in the Eagles organization, and I consider you correct.
Where do you fall on this if you want to get into the conversation? 610-632-0975. And it was the end of an era over the weekend in sports. John Kincade Show on 97.5 The Fanatic.
All right, guys. How was that weekend, huh? Looking
a Beasley Media Group station, broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studios, powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. The John Kincade Show with Bob Cooney and Pat Egan continues. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Fanatic Mondays presented by Pierce Phelps Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Visit nopaybryant.com for flexible spending options on a new heating and cooling system. And Pat, a couple buddies yesterday were very much in your boat. They were not ready to watch football this weekend. There was like very little being paid attention to watching football this weekend.
Yeah, I did feel like a pariah. I paid attention a little bit, but I wasn't dialed in.
You just didn't feel it. You weren't feeling it.
I wasn't feeling it. I placed a couple wagers, but it wasn't anything where I was sitting there glued to my TV. I don't even know if I turned it on, really. I was kind of just paying attention on my phone because there was a big UFC pay-per-view that I watched. But no, I enjoyed a little bit of a break. I know that it was like good football and all that, but I needed a break for myself, especially after watching that Eagles offense and watching them just become so high schoolish. And as Bob talked about, like you watched this weekend and you actually saw offenses and change things up and be creative. That just would have pissed me off.
I looked
good. I was annoyed.
I was really rooting for I really wanted to see the Lions win yesterday, though. That crowd was awesome. The excitement was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was the one game that I really didn't have, I don't want to say rooting interest in, but I kind of just watched for watching. The other games, that Packers-San Fran game, that was a good – all the games were good except for the Ravens kind of, blowing out. But
the second half.
Yeah. But I didn't – yeah, that game was just kind of a watch. I think part of it was like, oh, my God, look at what Tampa Bay can do. And the Eagles, crunched them earlier this year. Mm-hmm. It was one of those type of days. But no, I thought this was
they came.
Huh?
And you realize how far the Eagles came in a bad way.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought it was a perfect weekend, though. You had Flyers leading you into all football, both Saturday and Sunday with 1 o'clock games.
Right.
You had a great women's game on at noon yesterday, women's basketball game at noon. So you have that to start. Go to the Flyers, go to the football games. Like, I just thought it was the greatest of great sports weekends.
I enjoyed
Sixers 2 games.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching getting a break from it and watching being able to enjoy Sixers. And I know they didn't play all that well in Charlotte. And Charlotte's, down to like their third center, and the team kind of eked by and they kind of won on talent. But it's just been such a joy to watch that dude Embiid play basketball at this point. That
he's pretty good.
It was kind of the break I needed. We talked about this on Tuesday. They play. The day after the Eagles lose, you've got Sixers versus Nuggets, the two best centers in the league going against each other. Like it
was a cleansing.
Yeah, that is the distraction we all needed. And for me, they've kind of become that distraction from the suck that is going on at NovaCare. So I enjoyed having a break, and I watched the Sixers and did watch hockey. I watched the UFC. I kind of enjoyed watching other sports.
Yeah, I actually was going back and forth a little bit on Friday night. Boston was hosting Denver also.
That was a good game, too.
Yeah, and I kept going back to that, too. I thought it was a great sports weekend. And I liked that the Flyers were on at 1, and there wasn't much competition there, so that I got through the whole game, both games, without interruption on that.
Well, there was it just brings me back to the scorecard of the teams the Eagles beat in the regular season, the winning teams. Rams, Dolphins, Cowboys lost last weekend. Now 2 more teams that they beat lost this weekend, and the Bills and the Bucks. And the Chiefs are alive. And honestly, it points to the fact that when Andy Reid's team was in disarray this year, he managed to fix it. He managed to get his team back on the road. He managed to, and the Chiefs were the exact same record as the Eagles.
Veteran coach.
And the Buffalo Bills, after losing to the Eagles, go and win like 7 straight to get to where they were yesterday. It's inexplicable what happened to this Eagles team. I mean, you look at what Buffalo did. They lost a disheartening game here in overtime, a game that they kind of owned but still wound up losing. And what do? They turned the ship into the right direction, whereas the Eagles win that game in overtime, and then you never recognize them again.
They fired their OC, right?
Yeah,
they
Fired
did.
Ken Dorsey.
Ken Dorsey got fired.
Yeah,
And by the way, every offensive metric went down after he was fired.
and that's kind of understandable
they
now.
won.
I mean, but it's understandable now that we know what we know, having been through that with the defense, like having to learn or just getting adjusted to a new play caller might be more
Sure.
difficult than we may have initially thought. But Andy Reid getting the ship right, I would expect, because there isn't anything in the NFL Andy Reid hasn't seen. He's been doing it since 1999. I mean, he's seen the good, the bad, the dysfunction, all of it. I mean, you lived through the T.O. situation. You've literally seen it all. So because of that, I'd expect it. And maybe this past year, Nick Sirianni will learn from it. And for all we know, he will get clues on how to right the ship moving forward. I don't have faith in it, but we'll find out. There was a time where Andy didn't know how to navigate that. And I would
Sure.
point to that T.O. year. The Eagles were going through injuries, and Donovan McNabb was injured in the first game of the season. But in terms of the distraction of T.O., Andy Reid didn't really handle that all that well. And they ended up righting the ship, and it didn't stop them from getting some other big diva wide receivers like a Deshaun Jackson. They draft him, and he learned from it. So for all we know, Nick Sirianni will look back in a couple years, and maybe we are having that conversation as the greatest head coach of all time and in Eagles lore, because he did right the ship, and they're back to Super Bowls and stuff. I kind of doubt that, but you never know.
25 seasons of Andy Reid. Jeff Kerr from CBS putting it out there again this morning. 11 trips to the conference championship game. He ends up in the Final Four 44% of the time.
All right, so
in his coaching career. That's freaking amazing.
Yeah,
6 in a row now.
That's amazing.
It's unbelievable. It really is. And watching him on the sideline yesterday, I guess play was winding down, and it was, you're wondering, should he call a timeout or not? And I'm looking at him, the camera's on him, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking, and it's going through his mind, should I call it or shouldn't I? And I just went back to, oh, God, remember the days of clock management? But, that's not even a thing anymore.
No.
He is a great
He's got
head
that.
coach.
He's got that assistant in Kansas City, and I'm sure he probably had one here too. I just can't pick the name or remember it.
I think his name is Brian Johnson.
That monitors clock for him and helps him with clock, and helps him with some of that decision making. It's unbelievable to see. Sports Illustrated dies Friday, and you talk about the Friday news dump. Sports Illustrated done, and all of us have I would believe, great memories about Sports Illustrated. But there is it's amazing that there are things that if we had told you 20 years ago that something would happen where like Sports Illustrated would be going away, I don't know that any one of us would have believed it.
No.
It's incredible. And Pat, I mean, you remember it. You remember it. And I think it was even more influential for our generation.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Yours, and
Absolutely.
yours.
I mean, I had the heyday of ESPN growing up.
Sure.
But I remember my mom getting me Sports Illustrated for Kids, being all excited about that and looking forward to getting those issues. And
Now, did they do a swimsuit issue with kids? They didn't do that.
no, I got
right, there's
that.
no
I got
swimsuit
that
issue.
when I was going through a time.
Yeah, okay.
Through an interesting
wouldn't let
time.
the
And let me
kids
tell you,
have that
that
issue.
swimsuit issue did welcome me into manhood quite a bit. But nah, in all seriousness, it sucks. Getting like when the Phillies won the World Series in 2008, getting the Sports Illustrated, like the commemorative issue was paramount to getting like a collector's item. That was something that immediately was like, all right, I'm gonna get the T-shirt, the World Series T-shirt, but then I also need that Sports Illustrated copy. Same thing with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. I'm partly to blame for this because I haven't been a subscriber to Sports Illustrated in probably
In a long
decade.
time.
So I am to blame. But you kind of saw the downswing coming when they got caught using AI generated authors and stuff. Recently, that happened where they got caught using fake people to write articles. It was like, man, this thing is a shell of itself. But to actually see it die, it sucks for hard hitting journalism. To see Sports Illustrated die in the same year that one of my favorite programs, Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, ended up going away. It sucks. Like I want that investigative journalist in sports, and I don't know where I'm getting it now.
I think that's went away though with them. I think this is a clear example of
A little bit, yeah.
of another thing where they forgot who their audience is. They forgot.
I don't know
And the
if they could,
swimsuit editions would tell you exactly that they forgot who their audience was.
I just don't know if they could pay those people anymore. Like, I mean, and it's the same thing
like
happening.
the Rick Rileys of the back in the day.
Well, the same thing happened to newspapers too. Like looking at the and I'm taking this from the people that wrote the Balco, the San Francisco Chronicle report on the Balco experiment or situation. They spent like 2 years on that. And the two authors who worked on it said we would never be able to use resources for 2 years on one story in today's climate. And they said that about a decade ago. And it's unfortunately the nature of the industry dying off a little bit is money's tight, subscriberships are down, you got to cut costs, and you can no longer do the things that they were doing.
Yeah, it's a shame. Not only first and foremost, people losing jobs and all of that. That's the root of it all. But it's a big part, at least for me, your childhood. It like something that was so prominent in my childhood and growing up into my formative years is gone. You know, like I talk about my friend Rock a lot. The first time I slept over his house when we were in high school, we sat and looked through. He had a collection of Sports Illustrated that had to be hundreds deep. And we were just pulling them out, looking from the 60s and 70s and all of that, and just
So his
looking
dad
through
started
stuff.
it, and then he picked up with it?
He's one of, how many kids are there? He's one of like 7 or 8 or
okay,
whatever.
so they
he
all
has
were keeping
brothers and all that. But, such a big part. And, little thing like Faces in the Crowd, Pat, was I don't know if you remember this in Sports Illustrated, where he'd look at it, might have a little tidbit about a high schooler or somebody from your area.
Right, exactly.
And it'd be like, oh, my God, he
I love
made it
reading
into
that.
Sports Illustrated. Yeah, and you mentioned the Rick Riley back page and the Gary Smiths of the world. Gary Smith used to be a sports writer at the Daily News, moved on to Sports Illustrated, one of the greatest writers ever. It's just the covers. He's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Like,
The
it's
iconic
just
covers.
It's such a shame.
You say Sports Illustrated, and immediately we all have a cover that is the first one that pops into our head. I mean, it's just because the covers were iconic. Whether it be
Ultimate Weapon.
For me, it's the
Yes.
it's the LeBron one for me.
Oh,
See,
is
it's
it?
me,
Okay.
Ultimate
Yeah.
Weapon is mine.
Yeah, I mean, and I saw a lot of that going on Twitter. The Ultimate Weapon one for me, it was holy crap! Like this dude's 17, and he's on the cover 16. He's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and then years later, you've got Bryce Harper on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and that thrust him into the spotlight.
He was like 16.
He was 16 years old, yeah,
Right.
and all of a sudden, Bryce Harper became a household name, and the pressure was built on Bryce Harper like it was on LeBron. They both lived up to that hype, which is crazy. But it's just it's sad, man. It's a sad day for sports. I feel like
I think they lost their way though into messaging too. They went into a writer in Chicago saying that he went and studied like the last 3 years and saw how many it became. There were political columns, things like that were being made. I think they lost who their audience is. Guys wanted to see good-looking girls in the swimsuit edition. Guys wanted to read about sports. They didn't want all Sports Illustrated was never that deep unless it was a story usually about redemption. They had great stories about like guys that fought their way back from an injury or from an addiction or something like that. It's a shame because it's a lost art today. We just don't have it. We don't have that same.
Some of the best sports writers in the country, whether it was an in-depth, whatever it was just great read. Like I was a kid and my dad told me about Gary Smith working at the Daily News because he was there before. He left there before I got there. And my dad talked about him so glowingly and I got to meet him and all that anytime I got Sports Illustrated, I didn't care what he was right. Exactly. I made it must read growing up anytime he had something in Sports Illustrated.
We're waiting for news out of the Philadelphia Eagles as you are. And we're trying to figure out I honestly believe like some of these Netflix shows, they can't figure out how to write the script of what they're going to say to you when they bring back Nick Sirianni. Brian in Dallas joins us. Brian, good morning. You're on The Fanatic.
Hey, fellas, how's it going?
It's been better, Brian.
Yeah, Hey, John, real quick, and Bob can appreciate this. It's real fast. I want to give my condolences to the passing of the great Philadelphia High School coach, Rick Dankiewicz of Dobbins, who passed away this week, man. Rest in peace, coach.
Hey,
guys.
Generations of people touched.
Yeah, that was my dude, man. I went to Dobbins, man. We won the city championship with Hank and Bo. So, with any event, hey, I just cannot believe this, like, the pause of what you said of what's going on in the front office. I was one who was really pulling for Nick,
But just after watching games this weekend, because I just watched the Eagles all season long, watching what a real offense looks like, watching the ability to pivot and shift, watching like the same play run out of 6 different formations, and the fact that this is absent from completely absent from our team was nauseating. You know, I know our defense. Sean Desai got fired. I get it. But I throw that more to see Howie and what he put out on the field for defense.
Brian McCaffrey, Saturday night, Christian McCaffrey, lined up as a wide receiver, lined up as a tight end, lined up in the backfield as a running back, lined up in a 2-back set in the backfield.
Exactly. Just watching motion, right? I watched Kansas City run that same belly roll out route out of 4 different formations. Through the Scantling, 4 different the same play out of 4 different formations. But when we line up with 3 wide to the left, you know that damn bubble screen is coming. you know what I mean? It is like ridiculous. Just how and I think offensively, you know, we definitely fell. If you look at the stats, we went from 3rd on offense to 9th. I'm sorry, we dropped in passing from 5th to 18th with the same personnel.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and no, I'm going to say to you, Brian, and appreciate your call, better personnel. I think that you had DeAndre Swift was an upgrade, a clear upgrade, as far as just being more of a weapon, and it wasn't used.
No, what really, really pisses me off when I look back at the season is we were told by every beat writer, and it was a fact. I'm not blaming beat writers, but we were told by every beat writer that DeAndre Swift is lining up in the slot as a wide
from
receiver.
training camp.
And he's practicing in that, and he will be a running back. He's the number 1 running back, but he's so versatile that they can use this guy in a way that they couldn't use Miles Sanders. Do you guys have any idea how many balls he caught last year?
7.
Oh, more than that.
Okay, I don't know. I mean,
39.
Okay.
For 214 yards. They never used him.
No, they didn't.
They rarely use this guy, and I can't think of.
What did he have? 300 yards receiving?
214.
214. That's terrible.
214. You kind of throw your hands up, and you go, you completely botched this situation. You know, in terms of getting a guy out in space, using him out of the slot. You never really used it. You worked on it in training camp, and apparently it was pretty successful according to the people that were there. And then you didn't utilize it when the games actually mattered. In fact, you didn't utilize him week 1 at all.
I mean, that to me is just...
It was a precursor at how the season was going to go.
You want to get in with a 610-632-0975. You just watched it. You watched it all weekend long. But another thing I watched was again, and I wrote it down the other night with McCaffrey, and Greg Olson, was able to illustrate it and point it out. In a matter of 1 quarter of play, a running back lines up as a running back in the backfield, as a tight end, as a wide receiver. Now, no, Christian McCaffrey's a unique talent. But at least you can mask. There's no reason why DeAndre Swift couldn't have done all of those things. I mean, there's no creativity to it. And you're going to bring back the guy who made those decisions, who oversaw that. I'm just confused.
What is the whole DeAndre Swift thing? Why
they were trying to save him, reportedly trying to save him. And I saw that from a couple of the beats, by the way, last week, that there was people speaking that the plan was make sure he's fresh for later in the year. Now, I don't know why you would mean that he gets 1 carry opening week. But, I mean, it just seems like a dumb strategy to me.
That makes no sense to me whatsoever. The fact that he's not even a starter week 1, you're having him with the second team. You're, as Pat said, lining him up with wide receivers in training camp. You never use any of that. What were they looking at? And this saving stuff, get the hell out of here. You're not looking at game 1 of a season and saying, oh, I'm not going to play him because I'm saving him for the rest. No, you made a critical mistake at the beginning of the year and all through training camp by saying, oh, no. We're going to have to go with Kenny Gainwell as number 1 starter and DeAndre Swift as number 2. Horrible. Absolutely horrible.
A little bit of malpractice.
And this whole Rashad Penny thing. What was that? And like we were dumb enough before the season even started. I said it to Pat. I said, I don't know if this guy's going to make the team, let alone have many carries this year.
Well, one thing is too is that I didn't buy in all year long when anybody would say maybe they're saving him, and it seems like some of the beats believe that he was like they had a theory. You know what? We need to save him. We need to make sure that he's going to be at his best come the time the playoffs come around. It's just it's unbelievable to me the way this entire season went down, and what we're finding out now after the fact is even more like damning about how this team went about their business. But I truly believe they haven't had a press. They're not going to have Nick Sirianni talk or anything like that. They don't know what to say. They got to come up with what to say, and whether they know what to say right now is the big question. 610-632-0975. We're waiting, but there was another difference between the teams that played this weekend and this 2023 Eagles team. We'll talk about it next. John Kincade Show here on 97.5 The Fanatics. I love Bet Parks. And I can see a big difference between Baltimore, San Francisco, even that young Houston team in the way they're built, and looking at their rosters and saying how they care about linebackers, they care about safeties, and they care about physical corner play. There's a philosophy change, I believe, that you now have a chance to have happen with a new defensive coordinator coming in here. And it is a philosophy change away from the defense that Howie Roseman and I would have to assume that Jeffrey Lurie prefer. That keep everything in front of you, play it a little bit softer. By the way, there is a lot of teams in the NFL that have that philosophy. But I look at teams playing this weekend. D'Amico Ryans doesn't want his team playing that way. Baltimore, John Harbaugh doesn't have his team playing that way. San Francisco doesn't. They value being able to, I guess, physically beat up people and to try to take away the middle of the field where these wide receivers have to have their heads on a swivel. And it's something that this organization has shied away from for a while. And now, to me, this is one where I would consider maybe this is a perfect time, Bob, where they could make a change in philosophy that would benefit the organization.
Well, you had the philosophy last year, and you still had players like CJ, kind of, flourish, even though it doesn't seem to be a design that would allow him to. And then you saw him, play really well again this weekend. Flawed philosophy, okay. I hear you on that, but you can still make plays, and they just don't seem to get playmakers all that often on defense. And I think it starts with a linebacker. It's funny, I was texting with my old boss last night. One of my favorite positions in all of sports is a playmaking middle linebacker. And I've always loved that. And I think it would, and you saw it this weekend with these teams, the linebacking play. They need an overhaul on this defense badly. And hopefully they can do it. You have some stable pieces, as we know. And, but yeah, the defense is where all of your vision has to go this offseason.
And it really does. And with the draft order, I'm already looking at it and saying, you got a chance to really make this thing over. And you as far as defensively, if you want to change the entire philosophy, you're going to draft 22nd in the wild card round. I mean, in the first round, excuse me, because you were a wild card loser. You're drafting 22. So you got that going for you there. That gives you a little bit of that's a nice place to be picking. And then you've got 2 picks in the second round where you're going to be able to, at that point, try to accentuate the things that you haven't exactly been good at. You'll draft again you're going to draft again in the second round at 50, and then you're going to draft at 53. Those are three very valuable picks where you've got an opportunity to do something. And I'm sure we're gonna do a lot coming up to the draft, but it's the idea that you've got so many holes to fill, so many things that you've got to fill that you've got to change.
Yeah, holes to fill, younger players to get better, to stay healthy, to stay in shape, to be able to stay on the field. Older players that you're going to have to replace, linebackers that weren't good enough that you're probably going to have to replace. Well, who are your safeties? Yeah, there's so many questions abound on this defense. And I say all vision has to go to defense. There's going to be some holes to fill offensively also with, is Kelsey coming back or not? What's up with Lane Johnson and those type of things?
I would imagine that I don't understand what this is. And even listening to his podcast, I don't understand why it's still – I mean, I guess anybody can wish that he's coming back. But I think it makes it very clear that he's stepping away. I don't think he liked someone else breaking the story, but I would love to see him come back. One last ride.
I think there's a 3% chance.
Well, it's like you talk about. We haven't heard him say it to us.
Yeah.
So that's where the doubt.
When he says it to his teammates, I would think it's more important that he says it to his teammates. He says that he said it to them, than he says it to us. I think he wanted to break it on his podcast, and he got pissed that Adam Schefter was the one that ended up breaking the news.
He didn't look pissed last night, did he?
No. What did you think about that? I thought he's having a great time. A little strange. little strange, but still fun. He looks like he's having fun, and it just is odd.
I don't deny anybody having fun. I don't, as long as you're not hurting people. That's great, all of it. My wife had a pretty good line. She's like, I wonder what his wife thinks of this. And was she? I don't recognize his wife. Somebody
I didn't see her there.
on Twitter had a picture and said her face in the background makes it look like, wow, you're gonna have a real good hangover tomorrow. I'm all for rooting for family.
So am I.
I'm not the type of guy that likes to, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, taking the shirt off and jumping around and stuff like that. But hey, he looked like he was having fun. So, it's not me, but I'm not going to deny somebody else's fun.
He looked like he was having a blast.
Yeah.
We would usually be saying, look at the idiot in the crowd doing that. That would usually be, look at the drunk guy in the crowd that's doing that. He's got his shirt off and he's doing all that. That would be what we would tend to mock when they show crowd scenes. That it usually is.
Yeah.
You don't usually see that out of a luxury box.
And it's funny. People are like, oh, he was drunk and this. So who put it out yesterday? Somebody put it out on Twitter saying that they were talking to him in the locker room. And he said he had like 20 beers before he did his speech in the Super Bowl.
Zach. I think it was Zach Berman.
Was it? Okay.
I think it was Zach Berman. I saw the same tweet.
Okay. And he said he had like 20 beers before he gave his speech in the Super Bowl. And he said, God, how drunk is that for you? At 1 out of 10. He goes, about a 5. So apparently he thinks he can drink a whole bunch of beers because 20 beers is a lot of beers. And I'm not condoning anybody out there. I'm not putting it back or praising it. 20's a lot, man. That's
a lot.
Yeah, but it was light.
And he's a big man.
It's just a light beer.
Yeah.
And he's
that's a ridiculous amount.
Pat, you had a theory that Howie may be the guy who saves Nick's job here?
No.
No?
No, move on. Another topic.
You don't want that? You don't believe that?
No, I do. I think that there is a shot that Howie Roseman is stumping hard for Nick Sirianni to keep his job.
Explain
and it's something
this.
that I'm trying to.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that it's something we talked about, actually. It's something that you brought up, John, that the power dynamic of controlling the draft and whatnot, having a say. You think about the last time that this organization hired a guy that wanted control and maybe necessarily didn't ask for it, but ended up taking it, was Chip Kelly. And Chip Kelly ends up sending Howie Roseman right to the basement to clean trophies that didn't exist. So his track record with giving up a yes man isn't great. You know, when it came time for Doug Peterson to want control, he was kind of shown the door, or he chose the door, what have you. But it was going to be Howie Roseman's decision. And that was made clear that Howie would still be in charge of things, and Doug Peterson didn't like it, so they both went their separate ways. But I think there's a chance that, Howie Roseman is stumping for this guy because, as we saw with the Desai situation, it was hey, we really strongly suggest you fire your guys. And he was like, yeah, okay, I'm not married to him. Gone. But this also keeps Howie Roseman in charge of the draft, the personnel.
Correct.
The free agents. If you're Howie Roseman, why wouldn't you be stumping for a guy that's not going to step on your toes and going to let you do your job? I'm not saying it's the right decision, but if you're Howie Roseman, that's one less headache that you got to worry about is Nick Sirianni coming in and going, get me this guy, that guy. I think we should draft this guy. I think Nick obviously has a say in it, but I don't know if he's fighting back, let's say on draft day, if he says, I want that impact linebacker in round 1, and Howie goes, yeah, but that's not really our organizational philosophy. We're going to take a defensive end. I don't think Nick Sirianni's going, yeah, that's dumb. We're taking a linebacker.
Because
I think
he doesn't have hand right now.
Yeah, I think he just goes, okay, yeah, no problem. I can do something with the defensive end.
I think you're onto something big time because he doesn't want, look, he wants to call the shots. He wants control. You guys, what did you call him? The guy from
Littlefinger?
Littlefinger.
Yeah.
He wants the behind the scenes, pulling the strings. I'm the boss. I'm in charge. And that's where, Bob, again, you sort of rolled a little bit eyes at the term lackey, but that is the definition of a lackey. Somebody who is, the decisions are made for them. You're just carrying out somebody else's mission. You do not make your own decisions. Somebody else is saying to you, you're going to run this kind of defense. You're going to have this kind of thing. You're overseeing this operation, but you can have the job. But you're going to do exactly what we
That's a huge assumption on your part. Like, how do you know that?
That it's their philosophy?
Like, do you just stated that they go to him and say, look, you're going to run this type of defense. You're going to run this way, that this way. Yeah, but here's the job. I don't know. Like, we heard the airplane story once that, they want to throw the football and not run the ball after they just ran it against Green Bay and won the game.
Do you not believe that story?
I'm not saying I don't believe it, but I'm not going to go as far as to say they tell him what offenses, defensive game plans to run and say you just do it.
Well, it's been written before many times that the preference of the organization is that's the one reason that they wanted last year to bring in Vic Fangio, because that's the defense they wanted to run. And then when they didn't get Vic Fangio, they went out and we want to find somebody specifically who shares that mentality. That's not letting a coaching search be wide and varied and open to ideas. That's saying we have an idea. We need somebody who fits this box. That's exactly what they did.
They were very, very late in hiring a defensive coordinator.
They were.
Okay. You didn't have many people left at all. Why not find somebody that's under the philosophy that you just had, because you don't have to make that many changes in a short amount of time?
That could absolutely could be part of it.
That could be part of it. But as far as them telling a head coach, put it this way, I think the stories would be way more than us having to go back to an airplane ride 10 years ago if this ownership group was telling head coaches what offenses and defenses to run.
When they hired Jonathan Gannon, that was talked about, is what philosophy that Jonathan Gannon had, and it dovetailed with what they wanted to do.
Okay.
So, I mean,
they might have an organization, and I've said it. It seems to be an organizational philosophy of that. But as far as telling a head coach what to run offensively, defensively, here's your game plan, here's not your game plan, yeah, I find that hard to believe.
Right.
I don't think because I think we would have heard many more stories of coaches when they're fired or when they leave saying, I wanted to do this, but they wouldn't let me. Look, Chip Kelly came in here and ran that innovative offense. That had nothing to do with Howie Roseman or Jeffrey Lurie.
Yeah, but is that what changed them, though?
Well, Billy Davis, too, he ran a 3-4.
Right.
Not a 4-3. I mean, when I think of Eagles' philosophy, I think 4-3 more than anything defensively. But I think that Vic Fangio stuff, I think that's all Nick. I don't think that's organizational.
So you don't think it? You think it's Nick?
I think organizationally, the philosophy they have defensively is they don't value linebackers. That's basically it. I mean, I think they'll make it work. I think Nick really wanted the Vic Fangio system more than anything, and they don't push back on it because we've seen Jim Johnson, we've seen Jim Schwartz. Like, we've seen different kinds of defenses, including Billy Davis's 3-4. I would say Jim Schwartz's defense was different than Jim Johnson's defense for sure.
No questions
Jonathan
asked.
Gannon, same thing. I mean, it was a bend don't break, but I would argue that a lot of defenses are bend don't break. You're trying not to score. And
there are a lot of
you're going to give up situations plenty in defense where you're giving up yardage and they settle for a field goal, and that technically is a bend don't break defense.
And let's not forget, like I was talking about last week, this business model is probably tied together. If the ownership and Howie Roseman say, look, we're just not spending big money on linebackers and safeties. That's our philosophy. That way we can sign a Jalen Hurts, an A.J. Brown, hopefully a Devontae Smith, and all those guys, but we are not spending money there. It kind of leaves maybe a DC's hands tied to say, well, I have to play bend, don't break, because you're not giving me the resources. Yeah.
It
could all be tied together.
It's but this is a perfect opportunity to change philosophies, right? The cupboard is.
I mean, I hope they change the linebacker philosophy.
Like right now, the linebacker room could very well be empty, right? You would have no problem if they.
I mean, they'll bring
cleaned house.
Well, I'd have a problem if they moved on from Nakobe Dean.
Well, yeah, I understand.
That's a different situation. Nakobe Dean was injured twice. Look, he didn't look great when he was out there, but I'm not ready to just write him off. But for the most part, the rest of it, you can just kick rocks.
What about? Do you feel good with the guys they have in place? If you're looking at their depth chart at safeties and corners,
safety, no.
I don't want Avonte Maddox back.
Oh, I want Avonte Maddox back. Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard.
It's
he's
hard
never
to find.
Healthy.
He isn't, but it's hard to find a slot corner, and he's a really good slot corner. So I would be. I think I have a better chance of being on the Eagles next year than Avonte Maddox not being on the Eagles. Now, Bradbury, I'm fine if they cut him, but I don't know if they have a ready in place replacement. Keely Ringo gets rave reviews, but I didn't see enough of him to make a
I agree.
A call one way or the other. Like Keely Ringo isn't necessarily stopping me from drafting a cornerback in round 1 or 2, but they need a safety for sure. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem if they brought back, and I didn't look good, but if they brought back Kevin Byard, because I really do think that the defensive scheme ended up hindering a lot of the defensive players. We saw way too many guys forget how to play football under this Desai Patricia.
That is true.
Crap. And, Byard comes in, and he had a really good track record, and then he comes in, and he looks as lost as everybody else. So I wouldn't have a problem, but I don't know how much the money's going to be for him. He's a hometown guy. He might be willing to take a discount. They have to fill some holes for sure. I put linebacker way ahead of secondary, though.
I wonder if they just go young next year and say, here it is, Keely Ringo, Sidney Brown, Eli Ricks.
Well, Sidney Brown, they can't because
he won't play till November?
That's true. Yeah.
In November or December
anymore,
if he plays
though.
at all.
God, it's like 6 months,
Like
isn't
that, it sucks, man. That injury in a meaningless game ends up really hindering you.
Yeah.
To the point where you probably were going to slide him in and let him kind of get his feet wet and learn, on the job. And now you can't, and you're in a situation where you probably do have to bring back a Kevin Byard on a one-year deal, or, God forbid, they do what they did last year of Terrell Edmonds or somebody we convince ourselves, in June. Oh, no, he's actually really good. It's on a one-year deal.
Yeah, but it happened in January, and any more ACLs, whatever, don't they seem to only take like 8 months? If that's the case, that puts you at the beginning of the season. Now, 8 months might be that's when you start training, and he won't be ready for.
Like he'd end up on injury reserve to start the year.
Yeah, he's probably going to miss half the season.
I mean, we could totally see a situation where he plays in his first game back, and we're all excited to see him, and we go, "Oh, okay,
he's not,
maybe he came back a little too quick." Yeah. I mean, nobody comes back from an ACL than Adrian Peterson and looks great the next season.
Well, Carson Wentz his was MCL. Right?
Carson Wentz was and then broken back.
He rushed back, yes. No, but he rushed back.
He did. He came back a month early.
Which probably didn't hurt him.
That. Oh, did not
didn't help
him
at all.
No.
Bob, you said you and your boys were talking some Sixers basketball this weekend. What was on the group text this weekend?
Well, one of my friends was saying that he got in an argument with somebody whether Tyrese Maxey was a better shooter than Allen Iverson. And I said, that's up for debate.
Yes. Well, the volume of shots that Iverson took, I think that it's not the same volume that Maxey takes.
Yeah, no. Iverson, obviously. And his point was Iverson always had two guys on him, and he was still a good shooter. I said that a lot of times he might have been shooting at two baskets, and he could figure out which one was which. So that made him as good a shooter. But no, the talk this weekend about the Sixers, look, you're on pace for 56 wins. That's really good.
Really,
you're a team right now that with Joel Embiid and Maxey playing, they're 3-7 without Joel Embiid this year. He's missed 10 games. Think of that. If you turn that around, you're on pace for over 60 wins. Like this team is, whether we like it or not, as currently constructed. I shouldn't say like it or not. Whether we think it's fulfilled or not, as currently constructed. This is a really good basketball team right now. So what we were talking about this weekend, do you make a big move? Do you make a subtle move? If you make a big move, you might have to give up a Marcus Morris. You may have to give up, somebody else that right now is contributing for this team. What do? Do you want a side move? Do you want something smaller? There was talk about DeJounte Murray this weekend, whether he
really nice Keith Pompey piece.
Yeah. Whether he might, be a really good fit with Tyrese Maxey in the backcourt. If that's the case, you're giving up something pretty big there. I don't know. Like, it's incumbent upon Daryl Morey to figure this out, obviously. But are you looking for the bigger move, or are you looking for just kind of they picked him up. Didn't cost him much of anything.
Well, if you tell me a guy like Murray, I think it's one of those things where you talk about benefiting you at two positions. Wouldn't a Murray move benefit Maxey and make him potentially even more dangerous?
I saw that written, and my thought was, or for a guy that's averaging 20 points a game, or does it take some of that stuff away from Tyrese Maxey? Does it take ball handling duties away from him?
Like some freedom, you mean?
Yeah, very well could. I mean, it's this is a really tough time for Daryl Morey, as well as things are going. Everybody knows how it is. Well, you got to get that one piece or another star. What do you do? What do you do with this team that's playing so well and seems to have some pretty cool pieces right now?
I definitely do not I want to see a piece. I don't want to see I don't want to see them go back and recover a bunch of assets, Pat, like they did in the Harden deal, and then just say, okay, we just got these assets back, which we were thin on, and we're just going to now throw them all on the table just to like go for it right now. I don't want to see. I want to see a little bit more of a long-term view as far as what they're doing, because I think what they've got going on here looks pretty nice.
It looks nice, but the move to get a DeJounte Murray
Yes.
is enticing. But I kind of am leaning towards the stand pat. You got these assets and most of them look good, and Bob's become the biggest Nico Batum fan, I think, in the city.
He makes me watch him closer, and I can see why he is a fan.
Yeah, I mean, he works really good with Joel, and I'm never going to be a fan of Marcus Morris, but he fits well on the team, and he's looked good, and you've gotten some nice pieces there. If a DeJounte Murray isn't going to cost you more than like a second-round pick, and you throw in a Rocco and a KJ Martin, fine. But if you have to give up one of the guys that you're kind of relying on and is already giving you heavy minutes.
All right, I'll throw a name out there that you like, Pat, not to interrupt you.
Don't
say
do
those two guys that you just said, and they asked for a Jordan Springer.
Oh. All right. I thought you were going to say Pat Bev. Yeah, I like Springer. I just I'd be cool with it, I guess. I think Nick Nurse can.
Jaden Springer. What I say,
Yeah, you said Jordan. I was going to correct you. I was just going to let you go when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. I like him, but I don't know if Nick Nurse likes him enough to go, okay, I'm not doing that deal because of Jaden Springer. That kind of is a no-brainer to me.
Now, Murray makes 17-7 this year.
You want me to put it in the trade machine?
Might have to.
All right, let me put it in the trade machine. That's an interesting move, because I think that Jaden Springer can develop with this team, especially under Nick Nurse. I mean, I love the fact, and I've talked about it a lot, that Nick Nurse will give pretty much everybody playing time. Last year, Doc would be up by 25, and he wouldn't empty the bench till 90 seconds before the end of the game.
Yeah, he didn't use it that way.
Yeah, we've got Furkan Korkmaz getting some run on this team still, trying to boost some trade stock. So, yeah, look, I'm not saying I like it, but it's clear that he's doing it to boost trade stock, to see if they can, talk up anybody into giving them. But, I like Springer, but I do that deal.
The first thing I looked at with DeJounte Murray when I read the article yesterday was, how many shots does he average a game?
And how that would affect Maxey?
17 shots a game.
Yes.
That's a lot of shots.
That is a lot of shots.
And you already have, obviously, Joel, who's going to take 20, 25 shots a game. You have Tobias Harris, who needs to get his, and obviously Tyrese Maxey. Your other two starters, Oubre, he's okay with getting just his 10, but you're talking 17 out of another backcourt guy? I just don't know.
I've got great news for you, Bobby.
Go ahead, do it.
The deal of Robert Covington, Jaden Springer, and KJ Martin for DeJounte Murray works.
Ha!
There it is.
You probably have to throw in,
Hawks
picks,
want draft picks, yeah.
They
want draft picks.
Take a second. Go ahead, have it.
What did this weekend tell you about the Eagles' future when you compare it against the teams that are ascending, like Houston, like Green Bay, like Detroit, and those that are already established, like Baltimore and San Francisco? How close are they? We'll talk about it in the final hour of the John Kincade Show. Remember Andrew Salchunas today at middays, and the best show ever driving you home this afternoon here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Hey, if you've been watching the NFL
91 Burlington, Philadelphia, a Beasley Media Group station. Broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studios. Powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. The John Kincade Show with Bob Cooney and Pat Egan continues. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
How much do you believe of what your eyes showed you in the last 7 games as compared to what was shown to you in the 10-1 start for your Philadelphia Eagles as you watched? I just want to do a little exercise with you. And if you want to play along with us, you can at 610-632-0975. I want to ask right now, because it tells me how much the building's on fire. If I gave you and I'm going to just keep it to 2 seasons, the 2024 season coming up and the year after it. So we're just talking about a 2-year window. Would you trade the Eagles' 2-year window for what San Francisco has?
San Fran's been to what? This is their 4th NFC.
Third in a row.
4th in 5 years?
Yes. For the next 2 years after this.
Would I rather be San Francisco 2 years after this instead of the Eagles? I would probably say yeah. Their defense is really good.
I would.
I think both offenses, when the Eagles' offense is running well and looking at the talent they have, they're probably on par with each other. But, yeah, that San Fran defense is really, really good.
Pat, would you like to be the next 2 years, 24 and 25 seasons?
They're going to be in cap hell, so I don't know.
Oh, so you do think you might change places?
I might change. Yeah, their cap situation isn't great, so I might stand with
deeper than I did.
I might stay with the Eagles, but I mean, talent. Yeah, right now I'd switch today. Obviously, the one team.
Well, no, it's for the next 2 years.
For the next 2 years,
yeah.
I wonder how they maneuver this.
How about Detroit?
No, I think I'd rather. And again, Pat brings up a great thing about I don't know anything about Detroit's cap. I know I do trust Howie always to be able to maneuver
right?
it. Yeah. No, I think I'd rather be the Eagles than Detroit moving forward for the next 2 years.
Pat?
Man, that one's tough.
I think it's really tough.
That one's really, really tough. Yeah, Detroit.
They have a lot of young talent.
I need to see their what draft picks they have too, because they might. I don't know, but they might still have draft picks trickling in from the Matt Stafford trade still, but I don't know. I will lean towards the Eagles, but that's really close. I think the Eagles have the better quarterback. He's younger.
Green Bay.
Oh, that's tough. Eagles.
Yeah, I believe the Eagles. You know, Detroit could fall into something that happened with the Eagles, and I saw a story on this last week that Super Bowl run of a year ago could really have mentally and physically, played a toll this season on the Eagles.
When I hear that, I look at Kansas City.
No, I understand that, but that's a different team. That's a different, circumstance. You can't just compare Team A to Team B. Like, that's like saying, the center for Kansas City, he handled the season a lot better than Jason Kelsey. Like, I don't think you can lump them in. And all the different things, new coordinators and everything else. Green Bay or the Eagles, I think I'd rather be the Eagles.
Okay. So, I mean, it's like, so in other words, you're thinking that, how about Dallas?
The reason I go Eagles is because I look at that wide receiving core, and if they bring Devontae Smith back and that's
Devontae
really
Smith
good.
is coming back. I mean, he's under contract.
I mean, yeah, I know, but I mean, you're saying moving forward.
I'll answer. I'd rather be the Eagles. They have their quarterback locked up. Dallas doesn't.
Okay,
yeah,
so what team do you? So you think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC then? Next year
for the next 2 years? I mean, they should be.
Really?
Cap situation, draft pick situation. Like the teams you mentioned, they have too many
Green
too
Bay's the
many
youngest
issues.
team
Like,
in the
Green-
NFL
Green Bay
with
is-
cap space.
I
Yeah.
worry about their offense in terms of weapons. They like you talk about organizational philosophy with the Eagles not being they don't draft linebackers. Imagine your organizational philosophy being we don't draft wide receivers in the first round. Maybe that changes. And if Green Bay goes out there and drafts and gives Jordan Love some weapons, then I might change. I probably would change my opinion on it. But
Well,
until they do, I'm not going to.
But so Rams, like another one.
No,
I mean, it seems like it's
so hard to
their
say.
future's bleak.
I think we may be because I looked at it and I said, look, San Francisco. I think Detroit's a hard one, a really hard one. I think for the next 2 years, I may lean Detroit. I would lean San Francisco, and I would lean Green Bay because they've got the money to go add somebody if they wanted to go get a toy for Jordan Love. You know what? That was available. And they could go do it. They could be the kind of team that go do it. And the youngest team in the NFL also. But I mean, I don't know if in your guys' parameters, the Eagles are really, really close. All they got to do is just nail the coordinator hires. Is that
and they have to shore up the defense, and they have to, use their draft picks. Look, here's the bends that you get from doing a conversation like this. At the beginning of the season, we all thought the Eagles were the best team in football.
I absolutely did.
At the end of the season, I feel like they're the worst team in football. Look at the bends you can get from that. So now we're looking out 2 years down the road. I can't speak of the Eagles, let alone teams that I don't know salary cap or players as well as, and talk about the Detroit Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the Rams or all of that.
Yeah, I didn't put Tampa.
But in all honesty, the Eagles probably at the end of the season were the worst team in football.
The way
I'm
they
not
played,
talking,
it was
I'm
terrible.
not talking about the worst playoff team. Honest to God, they may have been the worst team in football. The worst team in football was probably the Carolina Panthers. Well, guess what? The week before in a game that Tampa had to win, they only lost them 9-0. And they dropped 2 passes that could have been touchdowns to win the game. The Eagles were never, ever, ever, never in a game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a week later. Like, I'm serious. They went from being, and rightfully so, going into the season, us deeming them the best team in football, to finishing the season as arguably a very good argument as the worst team in all of football.
So the question begins, why in the world would you bring back Nick Sirianni?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something we've been questioning for.
It is. I mean, it brings us back it's like a circular argument. It brings you back to, there's no case to be made for Nick Sirianni.
Well, there is. This time,
right.
1 year ago, they were on a Super Bowl run.
But
Year
as you
ago.
say, how things change so quickly.
Yeah.
How it changes. It changed between October and December, even though you were wisely pointing out that you thought it was a what? Yeah, but they're 8-1. Yeah, but they're 7-1. Yeah.
Yeah, I think every statement that you make about a team that's going really well or really badly is you have to finish with right now. Are the Eagles the best team in football week 7? Yeah, right now they are. That could change. Week 10. Yeah, right now they are. And then it did change. Right now, they're one of the worst teams in football. Right now. Could it change? Maybe. Why is the reason to keep Nick Sirianni? Well, if I'm on the Sirianni side, yeah, I just go to the 40th previous games besides these last 7, where the team was really good. I don't know. I've never seen anything peak and valley to this extent that this Eagles team did this year.
Where do you fall on this as we start the 9 o'clock hour at 610-632-0975? The 9 o'clock hour is brought to you by the Bagster. It's a dumpster in a bag. You can get yours today at Home Depot and Lowe's. And for details, go to bagster.com. Graf joins us. Graf, good morning.
I'll add to the conversation. Would you rather have the Green Bay Packers head coach or Nick Sirianni?
Green Bay Packers head coach.
Would you rather have Mike McCarthy or Nick Sirianni?
Neither. No, neither. Neither. I mean, I wouldn't. I would never be hiring Mike McCarthy.
For me, I'd rather have Mike McCarthy. But anyway, 49ers head coach or Nick Sirianni?
Not even a question, even though I can't stand him.
Okay, Bucks head coach or Nick Sirianni?
No, I wouldn't have Todd Bowles. Neither.
Detroit's head coach or Nick Sirianni?
No, neither.
Oh, I'd rather have Campbell. Yeah.
I'd rather have Campbell, too. So, when you ask the question, would you rather be the Eagles? Sure, talent-wise, I would. But when you turn around and tell me who our coach is, I'm sorry. I'm not really interested in that conversation because, to be honest with you, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This guy's coming back. This is ridiculous. We all agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand that, and I believe that's why we haven't had, like other teams do, hey, let's sit down and talk about the end of the season and what happened, because I don't believe Nick Sirianni could sit behind a microphone right now.
Right, John, literally, he couldn't.
No.
How could he answer any question? If I have 3 questions for Nick Sirianni. Okay, so all of those games that you won in the third and fourth quarter, who's calling the plays? Number 2 is, when you decided to stop running the football, right, in the Bucs game, for example, who made that decision, right? And then, like, number 3 is, you know, who made the decision to fire Sean Desai? Was that Nick Sirianni or, like during the season? I don't know. I just realized that, you know, you've got 3 or 4 quarters of football that they weren't playing in the first 10 games, and then they magically come back and score. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't understand it. And I absolutely have changed my opinion in a week. I changed my opinion from I was for bringing him back. And I just think the more that comes out, the more you hear about the locker room, the more you hear about and again, I don't like to use the word quit, and I don't like to use the word effort. But if a guy like Troy Aikman spots it and says that team was beaten before they ever even took the field last week, and they were down 3-0 in a game, and he said they looked disinterested on both sides of the ball, and you're telling me you're going to bring back the guy who presided over that for a 2-month breakdown? I don't get it. I don't get it. And I don't let him throw rocks and say, well, it wasn't me. It was the coordinators. Because you're in charge. Take the damn wheel. Stop the car from careening off the cliff. It's your job.
And that could be all part of why this has taken more days than we thought, in that Jeffrey Lurie is probably talking to players also. Look, if I sit and talk to Nick Sirianni and he tells me things that maybe I didn't know, which would surprise me, or gives me philosophy of what I asked for, yeah, I think I'm going to call the players and say, hey, what do you think about this philosophy? Will it work? Is this good for, you know, maybe he's taking his time and getting all the intel he can get as far as making a decision on Nick Sirianni. We all assume, and maybe rightfully so, that it's his job now, that he's probably going to be back because it's taken this long. Well, perhaps it's taking this long because Jeffrey Lurie wants to be sure in whatever decision he makes. You know, like, I am not sure on you yet. I'll give you a couple of days, and maybe he's really thinking it over, whether he's going to keep him or not.
I just, to me, I don't understand, Pat, how he hasn't answered for the 2023 season. Before we even worry about the 2024, where's the big bow that's put on this season? Tell us what happened. Tell us what went down. Why do you need a week to come up with answers for that? The future, you could say, we don't have answers for the future.
Yeah, well,
that's for a later day.
Maybe he told Jeffrey. Like, him telling us doesn't matter ultimately. We'd like it to. We really would. We'd like to sit here and act like our opinion matters. It doesn't. Our opinion's not going to sway Jeffrey Lurie or Nick Sirianni or any of that. So, for all we know, that meeting, and I assume he did, he laid out a plan that Jeffrey Lurie bought into. He answered the tough questions honestly. But those tough questions that he might have answered honestly with Jeffrey Lurie, we're not getting those answers when he eventually does talk. We're getting chalk. We're getting, you know, as I said, the ultimate, you know, we have faith in Nick Sirianni. We never wavered in that. You know, unfortunately, it didn't work out. And Sean's a hell of a coach, and Matt's a hell of a coach. And we wish him well. Like, stop. We you know, and we know it's going to be BS when we hear it. Our BS meter will be going through the roof at that press conference. He won't even open his mouth. He'll just step to the podium and it'll start going off.
Hey, Ike joins us on The Fanatic. Ike, good morning.
Good morning. So the thing is, I'll be all right if he come back. And the reason is because I look at the whole picture. Like Bob said, last year I seen what he did. I seen what he did up into the turning point. And I understand all the bad things that you're saying, and they're very valid and they're very true. But I believe in give this guy a chance to see if he can turn it around in the off season. Give him a chance to see if he can hire a defensive coordinator that they wanted instead of the one that they had to wait for because they had to wait for Gannon to get the job. I just believe in giving them a chance. And I'm being honest with you. I don't want no Bill Belichick. I don't know what Rosen and I'm going to be doing. I don't know what none of these people want to do. I'm sitting there saying, I want to give this guy a chance. Now, if he failed next year, he got to go. But he's been in it. Like, sometimes your track record got to mean something. I understand the track record the last 7 games, but the track record for the last 3 years got to mean something, too, for me. We always talk about loyalty with players and stuff like that. This man got us to the Super Bowl, and I don't know how much he did, but he did it, and I'm willing to give him a second year to try to turn this around. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah, but do you understand, though, is the idea is that if you take away – tell me what he is without Steichen and Gannon.
What he is the motivator, which obviously didn't work at the end. But I've seen that a lot of his players had his back at the end of the year. Now, we hear the little stuff that's coming out now.
Yeah, but they say he's a good guy. They say he's a good guy and a nice person.
But that's my whole thing. What do Harbaugh do?
What, John Harbaugh? John Harbaugh runs one of the most stable franchises in the NFL that is constantly
I'm talking about the play calling and stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. I know.
Oh, I got that. I got you.
I'm just talking about the play calling part. That's what I hear a lot of people
but what he
saying.
does is what Sirianni can't do. He keeps his team. He keeps his team from driving into off the cliff.
But he's been there for like 50 years. He developed into that. If you remember, like 3 years ago, they were talking about firing him. Every coach going to have their little cycles where they had a downtrodden time because they was ready to get rid of him.
I've never seen anything like what happened to the Eagles this year. Okay. And I would challenge anybody to tell me a season that went like that for any of them. For any of the great coaches.
You know, think of the year after the Super Bowl with the Eagles. They went 6-10.
Yeah, they lost. They lost McNabb game 1.
They lost. Yeah, but he wasn't gone for the season. You had all the blow up with Terrell Owens, all of those things. That was something that was spiraling out of control. I mean, it was ridiculously spiraling out of control. Yet they held on to Andy Reid. Kept the stability. He went on to win. Get into another NFC Championship against the Cardinals. All of those things. I understand what Ike is saying. Don't all coaches have a hiccup at some point? To the extremes of this?
I've never seen one like this.
Yeah, so if you're against keeping Nick Sirianni, that's your argument there too. Not to this extreme. So, yeah, I don't see the argument of keeping him as much as I see the argument of getting rid of him, but I do hear them both.
I mean, I think it was 32 weeks consecutive, the best team in the NFL, record-wise. And then you spiral out of control into this. That is, to me, it's crazy. I don't think there's any applicable comparison. And I would challenge anybody, if you got one, that'd be great. I haven't thought of it. And I've tried to look for one. Where a team was for 32 consecutive weeks the best record or a share of the best record in the National Football League. And then you just totally crap out, and your players are getting called out on national TV by analysts saying they are not interested, they are disconnected, they came into this game defeated. I don't know how a leader survives that.
Well, I made a great point about John Harbaugh too. So he's been in Baltimore for 16 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but he has had seasons 8-8, 5-11, 8-8, 9-7, 8-9. You go through those seasons once in a while. And I just gave you record on that season. Even if I went back to a Baltimore fan and said, oh, what happened that 8-8 year in 2016, they're probably going to be, I don't know. Are we going to look at Nick Sirianni's record maybe in 5 years if he's still the coach here and say he was 11-6 that year? Nobody's going to really question it probably.
I don't think anybody's going to forget this year.
Maybe not.
I think this year scarred a fan base. I really do. I think this year is going to leave indelible scars as far as a collapse. I mean, for this generation, this is as bad as the 64 Phillies. You go from being the best team to being arguably, as you're saying, the worst team.
Yeah.
I know, Pat, I'm never going to forget it. And but I don't know if I'll forgive it either. And that's a big word.
You will if they're back next year. If they come back and they hire 2 coordinators that seem to know what they're doing, and Sirianni ends up doing a nice rah-rah speech that rivals Gene Hackman and Hoosiers, and all of a sudden, the defense is playing better. Offense looks like it was last season, and they're back in the NFC Championship game, and we're not talking about coaching situations. We're talking about, a game that's going to happen. Yeah, we'll be back. Of
But
course you will.
no. We'll be back on the Eagles.
But I'm saying,
will
like,
we be back on Nick Sirianni? I
don't know if I will. I think I'm always going to be at this point a what is it you do here kind of guy, and worried about the offseason of do they fire coordinators or do they lose both coordinators and the impact that has, because he's neither an OC or a DC. He's tried to be an OC. He's failed miserably at it. So.
And he told us that he was bad at it. And that's something that's crazy to me.
Yeah, and I praised it at the time, and I'll praise it now, the self-awareness, but to not improve at all is kind of wild.
You and I have a different opinion on that. I don't believe for a second that he said, yeah, you know what, I'm going to give that up.
I mean, maybe not.
I think he got prompted to give it up. And guess what? By the way, it worked. So in some semblance, he gets credit. But if he's strong-armed into doing it, I don't believe he came in one day, and I'm 7 games into my NFL head coaching tenure, and I go, you know what? I'm giving up play calling.
Well, he might have been in danger of, I think he was, of losing the locker room. And at that point, if you lose the locker room and you're losing games, you're not long for the job. So it might have been a decision he had to make.
Well, you had Jason Kelsey on the field.
Yes.
Doing the famous hands up,
Fletcher
like,
Cox.
what's going on?
Yeah,
Similar.
Fletcher Cox had it behind a microphone, Kelsey on the field. When all is said and done, 5 years from now, maybe even 5 weeks from now, the look back on Nick Sirianni will include one of the best things that he did was give up coaching.
The play calling.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And
that to me that's a crazy thing.
When things are going well, when your team is 14-3 and they're on a Super Bowl run, that's praised. Wow, look at him, man. He knew better. He knew that Steichen was ready to go. That was a really good move of him to step down from play calling. When things are going bad, it becomes, well, what do you do here exactly? If you're not play calling and you're not in charge of the defense at all, what are you doing?
Yeah, because and he didn't fix anything. That's the bottom line. Is I got to tell you, the whole thing about forgiving is a big thing to me.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm ever gonna hear him speak or whatever and be like, you know what, this guy does have it figured out. I was wrong.
Having zero answers on how to stop it and stop it against bad teams. It's one thing if you're having trouble stopping it against the really, really good teams. You lose a game against San Francisco. Okay, fine. There were reasons there. They're clearly a better team this season, but there was also the scheduling situation. They were rested. You weren't. Fine, whatever. When you're losing to Drew Lock and you're losing to Tyrod Taylor,
and the way you did,
yeah, it's inexcusable. And for you to step up there every week and say the same thing of, we're running out of time, we got to fix it. Well, what did you do all week?
Yep.
Other than buy T-shirts with your players' faces on it, what did you do all week?
And that's a good talking point, kind of. We know they got knocked out by San Francisco, right? They got knocked out. Had they not allowed Seattle to go down and score that winning touchdown, or had they gotten the first down and somehow found a way to win that game, do you think the season ends differently?
Yes.
If they would have won in Seattle, do you think they gain confidence back? Do you think all of a sudden they start playing better than they had before then?
I will say it again. I believe by the time this whole story comes out about 2023, that game where Jalen and A.J. Brown went rogue at the end of a game, going for broke instead of going for just what would have been the tying field goal, I bet you anything that's part of the disconnect with what's going on in that locker room. That there's problems with that. That guys fight all week long to learn the game plan, understand the game plan, and 2 guys decide, no, we're going rogue. We're going to do our own thing, when there were simple ways to just keep that game alive. You want to get in, 610-632-0975. We are waiting news, and honestly, you stick around all day, and we will have it with Andrew Salchunas and with the best show ever. If anything breaks out of NovaCare, we'll have it for you first here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Show. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
We await news from NovaCare on a Fanatic Monday presented by Pierce Phelps, Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Visit nopaybryant.com and get flexible spending options on a new heating and cooling system. Now, it's not going to be like when there's a new pope, right? We're not going to see like the smoke. We're not looking for the smoke, the white smoke or the black smoke to come up. Like when they make a decision, no. When they finally decide to answer questions about the 2023 season, come to us and go, yeah, we got some questions to answer. We go, come on now, let's answer a few questions.
I know I was in the profession. I don't care about what are they going to say? I don't care about the answering of questions right now. I just want new coordinators, John. New coordinators. And what's going on with the head coach? What are you going to do?
Do you think there's a chance? Do you think that there's a chance that they would maybe still gas Nick Sirianni and get him out of here?
Oh, God, yeah. You have to lean more towards him staying because of how long this is taking. Okay, if I had him going before at 60-40, I'm still at 50-50 until I hear something. I am. I can see both sides. Jeffrey Lurie could explain to me both reasons, and I guess I could accept it. If he says, look, this team was just totally lost and he lost the players, therefore we decided to go in another direction. Or if he says something to the likes of, that was something, a total anomaly, in my opinion, and this is Jeffrey Lurie speaking, that those last 7 games happened. I still have confidence in the guy that took us to a Super Bowl just a year ago. Then okay, I could understand that. And we're bringing in Eric Bieniemy and somebody else.
Put a smile on your face.
Yeah, exactly.
Dallas fans were clamoring for Mike McCarthy to be fired, and Mike McCarthy's, his future hanging in the balance. And Mike McCarthy has already had his end of the season press conference and talked about it and deal with it. He's now coming back, and Dallas fans aren't happy about it. I think they were dreaming about Bill Belichick. I think a lot of them were dreaming that somebody was going to come in, one of the big names, like a Harbaugh or Belichick, were going to come in there.
I can understand them not being real happy about it. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
But they put him behind a microphone and said, talk about it. Talk about your season. Give us an answer. I'm anxious to hear what's going on here. Malcolm joins us on The Fanatic. Malcolm, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, how y'all doing this morning?
We've been better, Malcolm, but we're waiting for news.
Yeah, I hear you there. So I was just thinking, because I was watching this show yesterday, and I was like, do you think they would ever consider Rex Ryan for the defensive coordinator?
I don't know that he's been out of it for a while. And honestly, I don't think the Eagles organization wants or Nick Sirianni would want a coordinator that takes sort of center stage. And he would never be a quiet, shy, non-big guy in the media.
Hey, maybe that's what Sirianni needs.
Yeah, I mean, look, he did. We appreciate it, Malcolm. He did take the Jets to 2 AFC title games in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, with Mark Sanchez as his quarterback, he knows defense, but it's been a while. It's been too long,
Yeah, I think the
right?
Ryan train has gone through Philly once, and that's okay. I'm not a huge Rex Ryan fan. I'm not going to sit here and lie. Yeah, I know the Jets went to 2 AFC championships with him there.
Which they never do.
Yeah, I don't need that big personality. That's just me. I wouldn't want that big personality, the look at me kind of stuff. No, I'm okay. I'm all right.
Joe's in Joe Santaliquido's piece in bleedinggreennation.com, it points out that the Eagles are only the 4th double-digit win team in NFL history with a minus point differential. That's another one that is it's atrocious.
Yeah.
That is like that's atrocious. And they were 30th in points given out, points allowed out of 32 teams.
Yep, wasn't good. I mean, that defense couldn't stop anybody at the end of the year. Anybody. And the fact that we threw out crazy talk saying Baker Mayfield's going to throw for more yards in the first half than the Buccaneers totally gained against the Eagles in the third game of the season. We're throwing stuff like that out there, and it was true. I mean, it was ridiculous. This defense, nah. That's why I say that at the end of the season, I say it confidently that the Eagles were probably the worst team in the NFL.
I think when you let C.J. Gardner-Johnson go, then you don't let Marcus Epps go. You don't let – if you let Kaiser White – if you let T.J. Edwards go, you don't let Kaiser White go. And I think those are big issues with this team. And, Pat, none of those guys, groundbreaking NFL talents. But I just don't think you can just go bare cupboard and then, by the way, go shopping for Nicholas Morrow in August, for Cunningham in August. You can't just say, yeah, we're going to let him go. If you let one guy go, you got to have a plan to keep the other guy so you don't have a total turnover.
The T.J. Edwards one pisses me off. Like, I think if they let T.J. Edwards go and they brought back Kaiser White would have gotten exposed in this defense. I think he was a byproduct of T.J. Edwards. But for an organization, and we always hear the organizational philosophy, about linebackers, but there's another organizational philosophy with this team, and it's to sign young talent and get them locked in early. And T.J. Edwards' contract wasn't monstrous, and there just seems like there was no attempt to even contact that guy about a contract extension.
Did you see the Clay Harbor? His reporting on it.
No, I didn't.
Clay Harbor in Chicago reports on it and says T.J. Edwards did not even get a call.
That's
from
my point.
The Eagles. They never even made an effort to talk to him.
Like, we can sit here and go, oh, well, he went home. And it's true. Like, yeah, of course, he did go home. But you can't tell me in a sport like the NFL, guaranteed money being what it is and, injury risk, that if the Eagles were to call his agent in November and try to lock him in, that he's saying, no, I want to go home. Like, that's absurd. They didn't do it. They didn't contact him. They didn't try to lock him into a deal at all. They were content because they thought, well, we found him once. We can find a guy like him again. And they didn't at all. And the situation with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I mean, they let both their safeties go. Didn't really have a plan other than Reed Blankenship. Fine, whatever. But you got to bring back one of them. You didn't bring back either of them.
And what? Here's another huge. Who the hell decided that Nakobe Dean? And this is nothing against
anointed
him, but why? What proof was there to anoint him your starting middle linebacker that's going to make all the defensive calls? Like, we talked about that before the season started. What did he show you? What must he be doing in meetings and on practice days where you're in shells and walking most of the time? Like, what in the holy hell made them decide, yep, heir apparent right there?
Well, you could talk to me about, again, and I was a fan of them getting Nakobe Dean, but the anointing part of it didn't make any sense. The whole green dot, remember the whole thing is he's got the green dot. He's the guy.
Sure.
When, to me, you can talk to me about the football IQ of a player, and he has a high football IQ. Anyone who's ever coached him or been around him knows the guy is, but that doesn't necessarily mean the body delivers what the mind knows about football.
No.
I mean, especially at the NFL level. And there's things that there's great talent. There's stuff about having great talent, but you also then have to be able to be able to deliver on it. Like I was arguing with someone yesterday, giving me about Jordan Davis. And they're saying, like they know I'm a Jordan Davis fan. I said, I am a Jordan Davis fan. But the fact that Jordan Davis only averaged 30 snaps and ran out of gas this year is inexcusable. Like, that's just, as much as I like the talent and I like the young man, that's inexcusable when you're drafted in the teens, in the mid-teens. You've got to be better than that. And when you average 30 snaps a game, which is what he averaged, he had 3 games where he got more than 40 snaps. That's just, they got to expect more of him.
Yeah. Now, the two of them, he and Jalen Carter, you just need more of next year. And I don't know if their workouts have to be together, somehow get through more than 13, 12 games of the season. You got to be ready to go with a lot of snaps under your belt also. But it was just a collective, I don't know, air out of the balloon on that defense. Was it the change in coordinator that really got them to hit an all-time low? Because it was just horrible.
It was terrible. And more importantly, I wonder, now Sean Desai's gone. And you wonder is there was obviously a disconnect with, like, Sean Desai wasn't getting the job done, but the veterans did speak out about that they didn't like the change.
Yeah.
Now, I guess they weren't, but, well, what were you pleased during the year with what you saw going on? They just didn't like the idea that they were changing at that point in the season, that they were going to go make a coordinator change at that point in the season. And Darius Slay said it was like going to school. You had to, like, go to school and get, totally in what you would normally do in training camp, they were doing in late November, which really doesn't seem like a smart strategy. Let's put it that way.
No, were they 13 games in? Were they 10-3 when they made the change? Is that when
Well, his first game was the Seattle game, so it was 10 and they were 10-3 because they would have lost the Jets game, the Dallas game, and the San Francisco game. So they were 10-3.
I mean,
and he took over.
That was just nuts. The fact that you're 10-3, throw that out there to anybody after 13 games. An NFL team is 10-3. You're going to take that every day, all day, and to say, oh, but they changed coordinators at 10-3, and the fact that we all could make the argument that they got rid of the wrong coordinator at the time. That's just nuts.
And was it a panic? Like, it's depicted in Joe's piece today. Joe Salaquito, again, writing another one of these end-of-the-season pieces where he takes you behind the scenes a little bit of what's going on and what was perceived to be going on around the Eagles. And honestly, I think it's the one of the things is that it was perceived as a panic move, the idea of getting rid of him. And to me, it sort of comes off as a finger-pointing move. It's not me. This isn't me. This is the defense. That the head coach had to buy into this. The head coach had to have a say. He had to have some voice in that room. Or, Bob, he is a lackey. If he didn't have a voice in Sean Desai being replaced, if he didn't go along with that, and he just then he is a lackey. He's just there following what they tell him to do.
Well, no, I'm sure he had say, whether it was saying, no, I think we should keep him or not, and the minds were already made up. You don't make a move on a football team without telling the head coach or speaking to the head coach, I wouldn't imagine.
I would hope not.
Yeah, but I still just can't get over that a team was – this season is how weird the season was. At 10-3, we get news while we're doing a pregame show that they got rid of a coordinator. And we could have put it out there. We're not telling the audience, you don't know, which coordinator do you think it was? It could have gone 50-50. And you're talking about a 10-3 team.
I think it honestly may have gone 60-40. I remember you bringing that up as a topic the next day. It could easily have gone 60-40 that happened. Let's talk about a happier subject. So tonight, you get a little bit of there's certain games on the NBA schedule that mean a little bit more. When you have 82 games, there's certain games that have a storyline that mean a little bit more. And when you're watching one of the most talked about young players in the game, and Joel Embiid in the game, who is honestly having a better season than his MVP season, this is some good stuff that'll be on the Fanatic tonight.
Yeah. It's the Sixers, let alone anything else. The Sixers are a really fun basketball team to watch right now. They can turn it on when they want. It's kind of like, all right, you need a spurt here or a defensive stop there. And it seems like they can do it, kind of whenever they want or most times whenever they need it. And then you throw in tonight that Wembanyama is coming in here, and Joel Embiid talked about him the other night after the Charlotte game saying, yeah, he's special to watch, and I saw him a couple years ago, and, he's a guy that could change this NBA game. We all know Joel Embiid loves these kind of challenges, and I think you'll see something special out of him tonight. I believe it's Brett Brown's first time back here since he was coaching because isn't this his first year this is his first year with the Spurs as an assistant coach. So, that not to the fans or anything, but to players. They had a special relationship with Brett Brown. I think they want to show him how good they are, also him coming back. So, yeah, I think there's a little you have to look for incentives in 82 games.
Yes.
As little as they may be, something that puts you over the top. Maybe you get that tonight a little bit with the Sixers.
I'm looking forward to it. It'll be on the Fanatic tonight, and you'll be down there for that one tonight, right?
Yeah, going down. Want to get down there early, talk to some of the players and coaches and stuff like that. Yeah.
And maybe find out how Brett Brown's doing.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a conversation.
I'm sure that will come up as far as in the conversation, too. And, Pat, you talk about 82 games, and, Bob saying you have to find little challenges along the way. that sort of plays into the Flyers weekend. It's no problem with the Flyers losing to Colorado on Saturday. That's a really, really top talented team. And they had beaten them earlier in the year at Colorado. But it's the idea that yesterday afternoon was just one of those surprising losses that you put in against the Ottawa Senators. A little bit of a very sloppy performance, very unlike this year's team.
Yeah, that's the key. Very unlike this year's team. I think at the beginning of the season, you probably look at that game and go, it could probably go either way. So I feel like yesterday the Flyers probably played to their preseason expectations more than what they've done this season, because they've way outplayed what anyone expected them to do. Last year, you kind of saw the flaws of maybe a team that just isn't quite there yet, and that's one of the reasons why folks might be hesitant to jump on the bandwagon fully. But this is a season of growth. If you end up making the playoffs, great. You're getting valuable playoff time for guys that haven't had it in their career for the most part. And then if you don't, then that's okay, because that wasn't your expectation anyway. Your expectation wasn't to make the playoffs. It was to take a step forward, and John Tortorella has done that. But yeah, yesterday's effort wasn't great.
Yeah, yesterday. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well,
Pat.
I was just gonna finish up by saying Tortorella is a coach that won't necessarily let that just sit there.
Yes.
Yeah, yesterday it appeared to me his comments afterwards really pissed off after a loss, and one of the few times this season, because we talk about it all the time. How are they looking at this season? Well, as trying to build a foundation, as trying to find what exactly this team is, the character. You know, he talked about the balls that this team has and all of those things. That's what you're looking for. And wins and losses be damned. But yesterday, no, he was like, damn, we lost. You could tell he was a little ticked at their effort yesterday. And I think, and I'm reading into this, more so that loss hurt because it was a game for maybe one of the few times this season he expected them to win.
Pat, why do you suspect the Carter Hart discussions caused so many media members who cover the Flyers to get just so, he gets defended even when it's not like you can just say it's okay to say somebody's had an off day or somebody's not having as good a season. It seems like with Carter Hart, there's a lot of people who are very dug in.
Yeah, because he's 25.
And he's talented, right?
That's honestly what it comes down to. It's the guy was supposed to be the savior. He was drafted very, very high, second round.
Sure.
And he was the best goaltender for a long time in juniors, whether it be with Windsor or Team Canada's junior team. And then he got to the Flyers at a pretty young age, and he looked the part pretty early on. So you thought you finally had the guy that you've been clamoring for since Hextall, Lindbergh. So I think there's a lot of that. You don't want to give up on a guy too early. I think a big part of it is the Bobrovsky effect. This organization was so, and a lot of it was the Lord and Savior Ed Snyder. All right, but the guy was so bloodthirsty for a cup that he ended up demanding they go get Ilya Bryzgalov and then trading Sergei Bobrovsky. And he didn't see the forest of the trees. If Sergei Bobrovsky was a young goaltender who had never played that many games, he hit a rookie wall, a la Jalen Carter.
Sure.
And I don't think Flyers fans want to see that happen again. Of a guy leaves this organization for a couple draft picks and prospects. Yeah, in Bobrovsky's case, it was a second-round pick. And then flourishes with another team and ends up winning a Vezina.
Here's one of the things, though, that I don't get, though. It's easy to just say, guy's not having a great year. Guy's not having he's having a good year, but he's not having as good a year as the other goaltender you have on the roster. He's not having as good a year, and it's a very easy statistical case to make, and it's something that I don't understand. Like, look, I wanted the Eagles I did not want them to draft Jordan Davis. But when they got Jordan Davis, I was still happy because I'm like, look, he's a real talent. I've watched him play. I like him. I support it. I'm not giving up on Jordan Davis, but it's really easy to have one opinion when the guy's drafted, and then to be able to say after 2 years, this needs to change. This isn't good enough. This isn't where it's at. I don't understand. It's like, I think it's because of the era of Twitter that now media members feel like they have to do what we do every day, be able to argue all our positions. It's okay for your position to change. It's okay to admit a guy you support isn't playing that well. Or
Well,
is
if you're a
not
true
having his
media
game?
member, you're not supporting. You're reporting. You're not supporting or any of those words. I don't know why you'd make an argument for something if you don't believe it. I think as far as the fan base goes, look, if we're looking at this honestly, as far as the Flyers go, and you're a diehard fan, the change has to be. You haven't had a goalie here, like Pat said. You haven't had a solid goalie here since Ron Hextall. Somebody that you could put
count on. Yes.
Carter Hart appeared to be that. We can say all the Keith Jones and Danny Briere are here, and it's a different outlook and all. But you still have many fans that say, well, how's that different? It's just bringing back the old guys again.
Sure.
Same thing they've been doing for 50 years. I mean, yes, might this have a different look because they're going about it in a different way? Sure. But as far as the Carter Hart thing goes, I think people want something stable to hold on to first in something they haven't had in a long time. And that was it, the goalie of the future. And whether that pans out or not, or if the goalie of the future is Sam Urson, maybe that's the way it goes.
Here's something to look at with the Sixers and the Flyers, both having impressive seasons. The 76ers record against teams better than them in the NBA is 3-4. So pretty much right there, teams better than them. Sixers can hold their own, punch, counter punch. They're 3-4. The Flyers record against teams better than them in the NHL right now, 6-2-3. They've done great against some of the NHL's best teams, which is really surprising.
Well, they just had that 3-game swing on the road where they played three of the top teams in the NHL and went 3-0.
Right.
They're just fun to watch. And look, part of the fun of it, I think, is that there aren't expectations.
Right.
You know, they have them for themselves, and you can see the players out there. They play hard. And, you know, they're kind of following the Konechny type of play, of that ratty play. And then they have Hathaway and Delorier, those guys that can hit and will hit. And now maybe you're finding some snipers in a Tippett, in a Forster. You know, there's things there that are, And when you don't have expectations, that's fun to watch.
I think Steve, by the way, the Flyers will be back tomorrow night on the Fanatic against Tampa. Steve asked the question we've been asking all morning. Steve, what's your thought? Hey, buddy.
How you guys doing? I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the fact that Nick Sirianni's still here. And I understand a lot of people's argument where, I mean, he just took him to a Super Bowl a year ago. But realistically, looking at the face value of it, I can't trust him as a leader of this football team, as a head coach, because you don't have this type of breakdown when you're a 10-3 team. I still don't know who actually calls the plays. I don't think we'll ever know. All I just call the offense as a conglomerate, because I never – what aggravates me the most is that at some point in time, just to simplify anything and just take command and take control and try to right this ship. Now, I understand that there are other factors, whether it be Howie, this coach, that coach, or whatever, but you're the head coach of a football team, and you see that your team is sinking. To just simplify it and just say, hey, listen, I have to take control. I have to do something.
Yes.
But for them to come out each week after and look worse than the week before, I don't see how you keep this person and then say go out and hire new coaches when we're supposed to be different.
Yeah, I know, and that's it. And sorry we got to run, Steve. It's late, but good points. That's what I don't get, and that's why I think they haven't spoken, because they can't articulate it. If Mike McCarthy can go out and speak with his job on the line and can talk about what happened in the 2023 season, I want to hear from Nick Sirianni, and I want the story. I want the scoop. Why couldn't you fix it, Nick? And I'm sure somebody on the beat will ask, why couldn't you fix it, Nick? That's your job. That's what we're counting on you to do. Why couldn't you push a button that would somehow change the fate of what was going on?
I'm different. I'm looking more towards the future than the past. Like, get me new coordinators, get me a new head coach, get me moving forward. What are you getting me? And if Nick Sirianni is in fact back, yeah, okay, you can answer for what happened last season, because it can't happen moving forward. So, yeah, then that question gets answered. But moving forward, man, I want to hear new coordinators. I want to know their names before this week is over. Before today's over would be great, but before this week is over.
I'm telling you right now, this is, I guess it's that I'm not patient. So the immediacy of, okay, give us something. Let's hear something about what the plan is, what the future is. Where's this thing going? Because I think it's going to be, I personally believe this is going to be a really hard sell to this fan base. I think it's going to be, Nick Sirianni coming back is going to be an extremely difficult sale. I don't think it's going to be met with a lot of like a lot of joy or a lot of give him another shot.
No, not where the fan base is right now. No, I agree with you. I don't think they're going to be happy with much of it. A coordinator could come here who's unknown. They're not going to like. That's the mood now. That's the setting. These last 7 games have left fans in just the doldrums of Philadelphia Eagles football right now.
Hey, I want you to listen all day long to the Fanatics. Stay tuned. Andrew and Ray will take you through the midday. And if anything breaks out of NovaCare, you're going to hear it. And then you follow up with the best show ever this afternoon on your drive home, and they'll keep you up to date on everything. Waiting to see who the coordinators are going to be. Waiting to see if Nick Sirianni is retained. So many storylines. You want to stay with the Fanatic all week long. Download that Fanatic app and take us with you even when you're not near your radio. Support life-saving cancer research. Join us and our generous partner, Ron Davis and the Davis CPA Group, and make a donation today to the American Association for Cancer Research. You can do it at 975thefanatic.com/AACR because cancer research saves lives like it saved mine. Looking forward to a big, big Monday on the show. We'll look forward to having you the rest of the day. Stay with the Fanatic. We'll be back tomorrow morning, hopefully with some news that moves this ball forward. But considering the offense of this year,